"I can't breathe," she cried, but when the billionaire lifted the cloth, everything changed. The cold had teeth. Aria Moretti felt them sink deeper with every shallow breath she tried to pull into her burning lungs. The abandoned parking garage offered no shelter, only concrete walls that trapped the wind and amplified its cruelty. January had broken records tonight. The coldest in 12 years, the radio had said before her phone died 3 days ago. She didn't care about records. She cared about the 3-month-old baby pressed against her chest, wrapped in a blanket so thin and stained that the donation center worker had almost thrown it away before Aria grabbed it from the discard pile. "I can't breathe," she whispered to no one. To God, maybe. To the universe that had systematically stripped away everything she'd once been. Her inhaler had been empty for 6 days. Each breath came in jagged, whistling gasps that made her ribs ache. The asthma attack had started an hour ago, or maybe 3. Time felt strange when you were dying. Mila stirred against her, a small whimper escaping her perfect lips. Aria's heart clenched harder than her lungs. Not her baby. Not Mila. She could accept her own ending, but not her daughter's. "Shoo, sweet girl," Aria murmured, her voice barely audible over the wind shrieking through the garage's open levels. "Mama's here. Mama's got you." But for how much longer? Her vision blurred at the edges. The fluorescent lights overhead, the only reason she'd chosen this place, began to pulse and swim. She'd thought the lights meant safety. Visibility. Someone might see them. Someone might care. No one had come. Aria felt her body tilting, sliding against the concrete pillar she'd been leaning on. She tried to straighten, to stay conscious for Mila, but darkness was pulling at her with greedy hands. "This is it," she thought with strange clarity. "This is how our story ends." She'd been a marketing executive once. A woman with a downtown Chicago apartment, a promising career, and a future so bright it had made her squint. That woman felt like a character from someone else's life now. Betrayal had come first, the father of her child vanishing when she'd needed him most. Then the medical complications during pregnancy that forced her on to leave. The layoffs. The bills that multiplied like viruses. Her family's disappointment that translated to cut ties and blocked numbers. Friends who stopped answering texts. The fall had been so fast. So complete. 3 months after giving birth, she was here, dying in a parking garage with her infant daughter, both of them invisible to a world that had decided they didn't matter. Aria's eyes fluttered closed. She felt Mila's small body move with each breath, tiny precious breaths that Aria would protect until her last moment. "I'm sorry," she breathed into her daughter's soft hair. "I'm so sorry, baby girl." Damian Blackwood was not a man who made emotional decisions. He'd built Blackwood Global through calculated risks, ruthless negotiations, and an iron will that never bent to sentiment. Emotions were expensive. They made you weak. He'd learned that lesson in the back seat of a rusted Honda Civic at age 7, watching his mother choose between food and medicine. She'd chosen wrong. Tonight, logic said he should be home in his penthouse, reviewing contracts with a glass of scotch. The demolition crew wasn't scheduled to inspect this property until next week. There was no reason for him to be here, in this decaying garage on the outskirts of the city, at 11 o'clock on the coldest night of the year. But something had pulled him here. A restlessness he couldn't name. A voice in his head that sounded uncomfortably like his mother's. "Sometimes, Damian, you have to listen to what you can't explain." He'd ignored that voice for 28 years. Tonight, he listened. His footsteps echoed through level 3 of the garage. His driver had wanted to come with him, but Damian had sent him back to the car. He needed to think. To breathe without eyes on him, analyzing, judging, wanting something. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. This property would be demolished in 3 weeks. Another Blackwood development. Another profit margin. Another. He stopped. A sound. Faint. Almost swallowed by the wind. A wheeze. A gasp. Then something that froze his blood, the soft, mewling cry of an infant. Damian's body moved before his mind caught up. He pulled the flashlight from his pocket and followed the sound, his heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. The beam of light cut through shadows until it landed on a figure slumped against a concrete pillar. A young woman. Dark hair falling across her face. Arms wrapped around a bundle of cloth. Her body shaking. Her lips moving soundlessly. He ran. Hey! His voice came out sharper than he intended. Can you hear me? No response. Her eyes were closed, her face pale as death. Damian dropped to his knees beside her, his expensive suit scraping against the filthy concrete. He didn't notice. He didn't care. Stay with me, he commanded, pressing 2 fingers to her neck. Pulse, thready, fast, but there. I'm calling for help. Just stay with me. His hands moved to the bundle of cloth she clutched so desperately. For a moment, he hesitated. What if? The woman's lips moved again. He leaned closer. I can't breathe. The words hit him like a physical blow. He'd heard those exact words before. Different voice. Different parking structure. His mother, 28 years ago, begging the universe for mercy it never gave. Damian's hands trembled as he carefully, gently lifted the edge of the cloth. A tiny face emerged. An infant, no more than a few months old, lips tinged blue, barely moving. Everything stopped. The world. Time. His heart. In that baby's face, he saw himself at 7 years old, helpless and terrified. In the mother's desperate grip, he saw his own mother's final hours. In this moment of absolute vulnerability, he saw every person he'd ever walked past, every plea he'd ignored, every time he'd chosen profit over humanity. This was his mother. This was him. This was every soul the world had decided didn't matter. No, he whispered, something cracking open inside his chest. Not this time. He yanked his phone out with one hand while stripping off his cashmere coat with the other. The coat cost more than most people's monthly rent. He wrapped it around the woman and baby without a second thought. This is Damian Blackwood, he barked into the phone. I need an ambulance at the West Side demolition site, level 3, immediately. I have an unconscious woman and infant, possible hypothermia and respiratory distress. Get me the best team. No, I don't care if they're off duty, wake them up. 5 minutes, not 10. He ended the call and looked down at the woman in his arms, because somehow she was in his arms now, pulled against his chest, his hand cradling the baby between them. Her eyes fluttered open for just a moment. Hazel. Beautiful. Dying. I won't let you die, he heard himself say. Do you hear me? I'm not leaving you. Not this time. Not ever. She didn't respond. Her eyes closed again. But the baby made a small sound against his chest, and Damian Blackwood felt something he'd thought he'd killed years ago. Hope. The emergency room doors of Chicago Memorial's private wing had never opened for someone carried in a billionaire's arms. Damian Blackwood strode through them like a man possessed, still cradling Arya and Mila against his chest. His driver had tried to take them. The paramedics had insisted. He'd refused every time with a single word that left no room for argument. No. I need a trauma team now. His voice cut through the pristine silence of the VIP entrance. Respiratory distress, hypothermia, infant in critical condition. Nurses appeared instantly, their shock visible even through their professional masks. This was Damian Blackwood, the man who donated millions to their hospital but never visited, never thanked anyone in person, never showed his face except in quarterly board meetings where he slashed budgets and demanded efficiency. This was not that man. Mr. Blackwood. Dr. Sarah Chen rushed forward, her eyes wide. What? Help them. His voice cracked on the words. Please. The please did it. Dr. Chun had worked at this hospital for 12 years and had never heard Damian Blackwood say please. Room 4 now, she commanded, and suddenly they were moving, Damian still holding them, refusing to let go even as the medical team swarmed around him. Sir, you need to put her down. Sir, we can't examine her if. Mr. Blackwood, please. He laid Arya on the gurney with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who negotiated hostile takeovers for breakfast. Mila was still wrapped in his coat, still pressed against her mother's chest. The baby first, Arya's voice came out in a whisper so faint Damian almost missed it. Her eyes had opened, barely, and were fixed on him with desperate clarity. Save my baby, first. We're saving both of you, Damian said, and his hand found hers without conscious thought. Do you understand me? Both of you. Her fingers twitched in his grip. Then her eyes rolled back and the heart monitor screamed. She's crashing. Get me an airway kit. Baby's oxygen sat is at 84 dropping. We need to intubate, get her to ICU. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Someone tried to pull Damian back. He didn't move. Couldn't move. His eyes were locked on that tiny bundle of cloth as a pediatric team carefully lifted Mila away from her mother. The baby's cry was weak. Too weak. Dr. Chun appeared at his elbow. Mr. Blackwood, you need to wait outside. We've got them. No. The word came out flat, absolute. Sir. I said no. He turned to face her, and whatever she saw in his expression made her step back. I'm not leaving them. I don't care what protocol says. I don't care what makes sense. I found them dying in a parking garage that I own, and I will not, his voice broke, I will not abandon them to wait in some hallway while. He couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words while they die. Dr. Chun studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Stay against the wall. Don't touch anything. If you interfere, security will remove you. Understood. Understood. He pressed his back against the wall and watched them fight for two lives he'd known for less than an hour but somehow couldn't imagine losing. 20 minutes felt like 20 years. Damian watched as they stabilized Aria's breathing, threading a tube down her throat with terrifying precision. He watched as they warmed her slowly, carefully, her body temperature having dropped to dangerous levels. He watched as a neonatal team worked on Milo in the corner, their movements swift and sure as they administered oxygen and checked for frostbite. He watched and remembered. Another hospital. Another emergency room. His mother on a gurney, her hand in his 7-year-old grip. The doctors explaining words he didn't understand. Pneumonia. Sepsis. Should have come in sooner. Why did you wait? Because they had no insurance. Because she'd been fired for missing work. Because choosing between rent and medicine meant sometimes you chose wrong, and by the time you realized it, it was too late. He'd sworn that night, standing over her grave in his too small suit jacket, that he'd never be helpless again. That he'd never watch someone die because they couldn't afford to live. He'd built an empire on that promise. But he'd forgotten the first part, that you had to see the people who needed saving. You had to stop. You had to care. We've got her stabilized. Dr. Chen's voice pulled him back to the present. She's breathing on her own with support. Temperature is coming up. She's going to make it. The relief hit him so hard he had to lock his knees to stay standing. And the baby? Mila, that's her name, according to the hospital bracelet we found, is stable. No frostbite, thank God. Her oxygen levels are improving. She's a fighter. Like her mother, Damian murmured. Dr. Chen gave him a look he couldn't quite read. Mr. Blackwood, there are some things you should know. This woman, Aria Moretti, according to her ID, she's severely malnourished. She has untreated asthma, multiple vitamin deficiencies, signs of prolonged exposure to elements. This isn't someone who had a bad night. This is someone who's been living on the streets. I know. And the baby is staying with her mother, Damian finished. Whatever you're about to say about social services, about child protective services, about anyone who wants to separate them, the answer is no. Mr. Blackwood, I wasn't. The doors to the ER burst open. A woman in a gray suit strode in, badge clipped to her belt, tablet in hand. I'm Rebecca Morrison from the Department of Child and Family Services. We received a report of an infant found in unsafe conditions. I need to see the child immediately. Damian's blood ran cold. Dr. Chen glanced at him, then back at the social worker. Ms. Morrison, the child is stable and with her mother, who was found homeless and nearly dead in a parking garage. Rebecca's voice was crisp, professional, without malice but also without mercy. This is exactly the kind of case that requires immediate intervention. The child will be placed in emergency foster care until we can determine. No. The word came from Damian, quiet but with the force of a steel door slamming shut. Rebecca turned to him, noticing him for the first time. Excuse me? And you are? Damian Blackwood. I own this hospital. Not technically true, he was just the largest donor, but close enough. And you're not taking that child anywhere. Rebecca's expression didn't change. Mr. Blackwood, I understand you may have good intentions, but this isn't a matter of wealth or influence. This is about a child's safety. The mother is clearly unable to provide. The mother is in the ICU because of circumstances beyond her control. The baby is healthy, loved, and protected. You will not punish her for being homeless. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting a vulnerable infant from. Nothing happens to this child or her mother without my consent. The room went silent. Rebecca stared at him. Mr. Blackwood, that's not how this works. You have no legal relationship to this family. You can't simply. Then I'll create one. The words came out before he'd thought them through, but the moment he said them, he knew they were true. I'll hire the best family law attorneys in the state. I'll provide housing, medical care, financial support, whatever is required to keep them together. And I will tie your department up in so much litigation that you'll be filing paperwork until your retirement. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? He didn't. There was something in his face, something raw and desperate and absolutely immovable, that made Rebecca Morrison, veteran of 1,000 impossible cases, hesitate. This is highly irregular, she said finally. I don't care. The mother will need to be evaluated, prove she can provide stable housing, demonstrate. She'll have everything she needs. I'll make sure of it. Rebecca looked from Damian to the sleeping infant in the corner, now swaddled in warm blankets, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Then to the unconscious woman in the bed, who had nearly died trying to protect her child with her own body. Something shifted in her expression. Fine, she said quietly. But I'll be monitoring this situation closely. If anything indicates that child is at risk, I won't hesitate. Understood. Understood. Rebecca nodded and left, but not before giving Damian one last assessing look that said she'd be watching him as carefully as she'd be watching Arya. The door closed behind her. Dr. Chen exhaled slowly. That was unexpected. Get them a private suite, Damian said, his voice returning to its usual commanding tone. The best room you have. Round-the-clock nursing care. Whatever they need. Of course. She paused. Mr. Blackwood, can I ask why you're doing this? You don't know these people. Damian walked to Arya's bedside. Her face was peaceful now in unconsciousness, the lines of desperation smoothed away. She looked younger than he'd thought, maybe late 20s. She looked like someone who'd once had dreams. You're wrong, he said softly. I know exactly who they are. He reached out and gently adjusted the blanket around her shoulders, a gesture so tender that Dr. Chen felt like she was intruding on something sacred. They're the people I would have been, Damian continued, if someone had stopped. If someone had seen us. If someone had cared enough to break their own rules. He turned to face the doctor, and his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if Damian Blackwood were a man who cried. My mother died in a hospital like this because we couldn't afford to save her. I was 7 years old, and I stood there and watched her slip away, and I swore I'd never be helpless again. His jaw tightened. But I never swore I'd help others. I just swore I'd never be them. And now? Dr. Chen asked gently. Damian looked back at Arya, then at the tiny bundle that was Mila, and something fundamental shifted in his chest, a lock turning, a door opening, a wall crumbling that he'd spent 28 years building. Now, he said, I'm choosing differently. Hours later, Damian stood at the window of the private suite, watching the sun rise over Chicago. Behind him, Arya slept in a bed that was probably the most comfortable thing she'd touched in months. Mila was in a bassinet beside her mother, monitored, warm, safe. His phone had been buzzing for the past hour. His assistant Marcus, his board members, his legal team, everyone wanted to know where he was, why he'd disappeared, why he'd sent his driver back without him. He'd ignored them all. Now, he finally answered Marcus's 10th call. Do you have any idea what time it is? Marcus's voice was tight with stress. You have a meeting with the Lexington investors in 3 hours. Where are you? Cancel it. What? Damian, we've been working on this deal for 6 months. Cancel it. A pause. What's going on? Damian glanced back at the sleeping woman and child. I need you to do something for me. Find the best family law attorney in Chicago. Then find an apartment, something safe, clean, fully furnished. 3 bedrooms. Good neighborhood. I need it ready in 48 hours. An apartment? For who? For someone who needs one. Damian. Marcus. His voice went soft, serious. Do you remember what you asked me 5 years ago? When I hired you. You asked why I'd built all this wealth if I was just going to die alone with it. I remember. You told me to shut up and file the paperwork. A ghost of a smile touched Damian's lips. I should have answered you then. I'm answering now. I built it because I didn't know how to do anything else after watching my mother die. I built it because being powerful meant never being helpless again. But you were right. What's the point? And you're figuring that out now? At a pause, presumably checking his watch, 6 in the morning. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. This is about that report that came through emergency services, isn't it? The woman and baby found in the West Side property. Damian didn't answer. Christ, Damian. You found them yourself, didn't you? Get me that attorney. Get me that apartment. And Marcus. Yeah. Clear my schedule for the next week. The board is going to lose their minds. Let them. Damian turned back to the window. I've spent 28 years building an empire. I think I can spare a week learning how to be human again. He ended the call and walked back to Aria's bedside. She was still unconscious, but her breathing was stronger now. Color had returned to her cheeks. The monitors beeped steadily, reassuringly. Damian sat in the chair beside her bed, something he'd never done for anyone, not in all his years of hospital donations and board meetings. You're going to be okay, he said quietly. Both of you. I don't know how yet, and I don't know what happens next. But I know this, I found you for a reason. Maybe you found me for a reason. And I'm not walking away. Mila made a small sound in her sleep, one tiny fist escaping her blanket. Damian reached over and gently covered her hand with his finger. She instinctively gripped it, her hold surprisingly strong for someone so small. And Damian Blackwood, billionaire, ruthless negotiator, man who never stopped for anyone, felt his carefully constructed walls crumble completely. I've got you, he whispered to them both. I promise. I've got you. Outside, the sun rose over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside, 3 strangers became something else entirely. A family waiting to happen. A second chance waiting to bloom. A story that was just beginning. Aria woke to softness. That was the first shock, not pain, not cold, not the concrete pressing into her spine. Softness. Warmth. The gentle beep of machines that meant she was alive. The second shock was that she couldn't breathe. Panic slammed into her chest. The tube. There was something in her throat. She tried to cough, to pull it out, her hands flailing. Easy. Easy. A firm hand caught her wrist, gentle but unyielding. You're intubated. The doctor's coming to remove it. Just breathe through your nose. You're safe. That voice. She knew that voice. Aria forced her eyes to focus. A man sat beside her bed, sharp features, dark hair, expensive suit rumpled in a way that suggested he'd been wearing it for hours. Eyes that were somehow both cold and burning. The man from the garage. The man who'd found her dying. Dr. Chun appeared at her other side, all efficiency and calm. Aria, I'm going to remove the tube. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it'll be over quickly. On 3. 1, 2. The world became coughing and gagging and tears streaming down her face, but then it was out and she could breathe, really breathe, and oh God, where was Mila? The word came out as a rasp. Where's my baby? Where's? Right here. The man, what was his name? Stood and lifted something from beside the bed. A bassinet. And in it, wrapped in clean white blankets, was Mila. Alive. Pink. Breathing. Aria's sob tore through the room. Can I? Her voice cracked. Can I hold her? Dr. Chun checked the monitors, then nodded. For a few minutes. You're still weak. The man, no Damian, his name was Damian Blackwood, she remembered now, carefully lifted Mila and placed her in Aria's arms with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone who looked like he negotiated wars for a living. Mila's eyes opened. Dark eyes, beautiful eyes, her father's eyes, but Arya pushed that thought away. This was her daughter. Hers. And she was alive. "Hi, sweet girl," Arya whispered, tears streaming freely now. "Mama's here. Mama's here." Mila made a small cooing sound and Arya broke completely, curling around her daughter like she could absorb her back into her body, keep her safe forever in the only place that had ever truly been safe, against her mother's heart. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." "Stop." Damian's voice was quiet but firm. "You have nothing to apologize for." Arya looked up at him through tears. "I almost got her killed. You kept her alive." He sat back down, his eyes never leaving her face. "Against impossible odds, in conditions that would have broken most people, you kept your daughter alive. You have nothing to apologize for." "I was homeless. I was dying. You were surviving." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, memory, recognition. "There's no shame in that." Arya wanted to argue, but she didn't have the strength. She just held Mila and let the tears come until they finally ran dry. Dr. Chen cleared her throat gently. "I need to ask you some questions, Arya. Standard protocol for cases like yours. Is that okay?" Cases like hers. Cases of women found dying with their babies in parking garages. "Okay," she whispered. "How long have you been homeless?" 3 months. Since 2 weeks after Mila was born. "And before that?" Arya closed her eyes. "I had an apartment. A job. A life." "What happened?" The question everyone always asked. As if there was a single answer. As if her entire existence could be reduced to one catastrophic moment instead of 1,000 small failures and betrayals. "I got pregnant," she said finally. "Complications forced me onto medical leave. My boyfriend, Mila's father, he left. Disappeared. I tried to keep working, but the complications got worse. My company was downsizing. I was let go. The medical bills piled up. I couldn't pay rent. My family." Her voice cracked. "My family was disappointed. That's what my mother said. Disappointed that I'd ruined my life. They cut me off." "Friends?" Dr. Chen asked gently. Arya laughed, a bitter sound. "Friends disappear when you can't afford to meet them for brunch anymore. When you're calling asking for help instead of sharing success stories. Funny how that works." "So you ended up on the streets." "I ended up in shelters first. But they fill up fast, especially in winter. And single mothers with infants, we're complicated. We take up more space. We have more needs. So we get turned away first." She looked down at Mila. "I tried everything. Every program, every resource. But there's always a waiting list, always paperwork, always reasons why you don't quite qualify. And meanwhile, you're sleeping in your car until that gets towed. Then in doorways until police move you along. Then in parking garages because at least they're lit and people might see you if something happens." "And your asthma?" Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. "Ran out of medication 2 months ago. Couldn't afford refills. Tried to make it work." She met the doctor's eyes. Obviously that didn't work out great. Dr. Chen's expression softened. "You're lucky to be alive." "I'm lucky he found us." Arya looked at Damian. Really looked at him. "Why were you there? In that garage, in the middle of the night?" Damian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "I own that property," he said finally. "It's scheduled for demolition. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. The inspection was scheduled for next week." "So why were you?" His shoulders tensed. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It was haunted. Raw. Full of something that looked like her own pain reflected back. "Because," he said quietly, 28 years ago, my mother died in a parking garage not unlike that one. And sometimes, late at night, I go to places like it and I wonder if anyone heard her crying for help. If anyone stopped. If anyone cared." The room went silent except for the beeping of monitors and Mila's soft breathing. "I'm sorry," Arya whispered. "Don't be." Damian's jaw tightened. She made a choice. Between food and her insulin. She thought she could manage. She was wrong. "How old were you?" 7. God. He'd been 7 years old. "We were living in her car," he continued, his voice flat now, emotionless in the way of someone who'd told this story so many times it had lost its power to hurt him. Except it hadn't. She could see that it hadn't. She was a teacher. A good one. But she got sick, missed too much work, got fired. Lost our apartment. We had nowhere to go. She kept saying it was temporary. That she'd find something. That we'd be okay. But you weren't. No. We weren't. He turned back to the window. I woke up one morning and she was cold. She'd gone into a diabetic coma during the night. I didn't know what to do. I was 7. I sat with her for hours before someone finally noticed a kid sitting in a car crying and called for help. But it was too late. Arya's heart cracked open. Damian. I went into foster care after that. Got adopted eventually by a wealthy family who saw potential in me. They weren't warm, but they were strategic. They taught me that survival means power. That power means wealth. That if you're rich enough, you'll never be helpless again. And you believed them. I built my life on that belief. He looked at her directly now. I built an empire on the idea that money solves everything. That if you're successful enough, tragic enough stories won't happen to you. But they do, Arya said softly. They happen anyway. Money just insulates you from having to see them. Yes. The word came out like a confession. And I was very good at not seeing. At walking past homeless people on the street. At donating to charities from a distance without ever actually meeting the people they helped. At building expensive developments on properties where desperate people were sleeping. Until that night. Until that night. He moved closer to her bed, his eyes locked on hers. I heard you whisper, "I can't breathe," and it was like hearing my mother's voice. Like the universe giving me one more chance to do what I couldn't do at 7 years old. Save someone. Save you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. I should let you rest, Arya. You've been through significant trauma. Your body needs time to recover. Wait. Arya looked between the doctor and Damian. What happens now? Where do I go when I leave here? The question she'd been dreading. Because she knew the answer. Back to the streets. Back to the cold. Back to... You're not going back, Damian said firmly. I've arranged an apartment. Fully furnished. In a safe neighborhood. You and Mila will stay there while you recover. Arya stared at him. What? You'll have everything you need. Medical care, food, baby supplies. I've also arranged for job training programs once you're healthy enough. No. The word burst out of her. No, I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this is insane. Because men don't just give women apartments and expect nothing in return. Damian's expression went cold. I'm not those men. Everyone says that. I'm sure they do. He leaned forward, his voice intense. But I'm not asking you to trust me, Arya. I'm asking you to trust yourself. Live in the apartment. Take the help. If at any point you feel unsafe, if I do anything that makes you uncomfortable, you leave. I'll make sure you have resources to go somewhere else. But don't reject help out of pride or fear. Not when Mila needs it. It was the mention of Mila that did it. The reminder that this wasn't just about her anymore. Why are you doing this? She asked, hating the way her voice shook. Because someone should have done it for my mother. Because someone should have done it for me. Because, he paused, something vulnerable flashing across his face. Because when I saw you in that garage, I didn't see a stranger. I saw every person I've ever ignored. Every plea I've walked past. Every time I chose profit over humanity. And I can't, his voice broke. I can't keep being that person. Arya looked down at Mila, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her daughter deserved warmth. Safety. A chance at life. She deserved more than Arya's pride. Okay, she whispered. But this is temporary. Just until I get back on my feet. I'm not a charity case. You're not a charity case, Damian agreed. You're a survivor who needs a chance. There's a difference. Dr. Chen smiled. I'll leave you two to work out the details. Arya, you'll need to stay here for at least another 48 hours. We need to monitor your recovery and make sure there are no complications. She left, and the room fell into silence again. Arya studied Damian, this strange, damaged billionaire who'd somehow found her in her darkest moment. This man who looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. Like he was trying to save someone who'd died long ago. What was her name? She asked softly. Your mother. He blinked, surprised by the question. Catherine. Catherine Blackwood. She'd be proud of you. For stopping. For caring. Maybe. His eyes were suspiciously bright. Or maybe she'd ask me why it took so long. Better late than never. Is it? He looked at her with something that might have been hope. Better late than never? Before Arya could answer, Mila's breathing changed. A small hitch, a pause, then nothing. The monitor began to scream. Arya's heart stopped. No. No, 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 Mila. Dr. Chen burst back into the room with a full team. Someone pulled Mila from Arya's arms despite her screams. The world became chaos and terror, and Damian's hand suddenly gripping hers so tightly it hurt. She's not breathing. Get me the crash cart. Possible apnea episode. Arya couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but watch as they worked on her baby. Her tiny perfect baby who was supposed to be safe now, who was supposed to be okay. A cough. A gasp. A cry, thin and weak but there. We've got her. She's back. Arya collapsed against the pillows, sobbing so hard she thought she might break. Damian's hand was still gripping hers, and she realized distantly that he was shaking too. Dr. Chen looked up, her face grave. She had an apnea episode. Her body's still recovering from the hypothermia and stress. We'll need to monitor her more closely. She's not out of the woods yet. Whatever you need to do, Damian said hoarsely. Whatever it takes. They transferred Mila to the NICU. Arya tried to follow, tried to get out of bed despite the 4 lines and her own weakness. Arya, you can't, Dr. Chen tried to stop her. That's my daughter. She was screaming now, past caring. That's my baby, I need to. I'll go with her. Damian was suddenly there, supporting her weight. Get a wheelchair. Now. Someone brought one. Damian helped her into it, careful of the 4 line, then pushed her down the hall to the NICU. Through the window, they could see Mila in an incubator, wires and monitors attached to her tiny body. Arya pressed her hands against the glass, tears streaming down her face. I can't lose her, she whispered. She's all I have. I can't. You won't. Damian knelt beside the wheelchair, his hand covering hers on the glass. Do you hear me? You won't lose her. She's a fighter. She survived hypothermia and homelessness and her mother's asthma attack. She'll survive this too. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make it true. Arya turned to look at him, really look at him. At this broken wealthy man who carried his own ghosts. Who'd found her dying and refused to let her go. Why do you care so much? She asked through tears. You don't know us. We're nothing to you. Damian's hand tightened on hers. His eyes met hers, and they were full of a pain so raw it took her breath away. You're wrong, he said quietly. You're everything I couldn't save. Everyone I walked past. Every plea I ignored because it was easier not to see. You're my mother, dying in a parking garage while I sat there helpless. You're the person I've been running from for 28 years. I'm not your redemption, Arya said, but her voice was gentle. You can't fix your past by saving me. Maybe not. A sad smile touched his lips. But maybe I can stop running from it. Maybe I can finally do what I should have been doing all along. What's that? Caring. He looked back at Mila through the glass. Actually caring about what happens to people when the world decides they don't matter. They sat there in silence, watching the baby fight for life. Two broken people, strangers bound by trauma and circumstance. By parallel pasts and uncertain futures. "Okay," Arya said finally, her voice small but steady. "Okay. I'll stay in your apartment. I'll accept your help. Not because I trust you, not yet. But because you're right. Mila needs it. And I can't let my pride kill my daughter." "Thank you." "But Damian?" She turned to face him. "If this is some kind of savior complex, if you're doing this to feel better about yourself, if you think saving me will erase what happened to your mother, it won't. Trauma doesn't work that way." "I know." He met her eyes. "This isn't about erasing anything. It's about finally facing it. Finally stopping instead of walking past. Finally being the person my mother raised me to be before poverty and grief taught me to only look out for myself." And who was that? Someone who cared. Someone who helped. Someone who understood that wealth means nothing if you hoard it while others suffer. Arya studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay then. Let's see if we can figure out how to be those people together." His hand was still covering hers on the glass. Neither of them moved to pull away. Inside the NICU, Mila's monitor beeped steadily, a rhythm like a heartbeat, like a promise, like the beginning of something neither of them had planned but both desperately needed. A second chance. A way forward. A breath after drowning. Hope. 3 days later, Arya stood in front of a building that made her chest tight for entirely different reasons than asthma. It was beautiful. Not ostentatious, but elegant, red brick with ivy climbing the walls, black iron railings, window boxes that would bloom with flowers in spring. The kind of building she'd walked past 1,000 times in her old life, thinking someday had arrived through the strangest door imaginable. Ready. Damian stood beside her, holding the car seat that cradled Mila. The baby had been cleared for discharge that morning. Her apnea episode declared a one-time stress response. She was healthy. She was safe. They were going home. Except it wasn't home. It was his charity. His guilt. His attempt to save a ghost. Arya pushed the thought away and nodded. Ready. The elevator ride to the 4th floor was silent. Damian seemed nervous, an expression that looked foreign on his usually controlled face. He kept glancing at her, then away, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. At apartment 4C, he handed her a set of keys. "You should be the one to open it," he said. Arya's hands shook as she fit the key into the lock. The door swung open. She stopped breathing. The apartment was perfect. Hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon light streaming through large windows. The living room was furnished with a comfortable couch in soft gray, a coffee table with fresh flowers, bookshelves already lined with volumes. The kitchen was small but modern, stocked with groceries she could see through the open cabinet doors. Down a short hallway, she could see 2 bedroom doors standing open. But it was the details that broke her. A high chair in the corner, still in its box. A baby bouncer by the window. A diaper-changing station set up in what must be the nursery. Bottles lined up on a drying rack. Formula in the cabinet. Diapers stacked neatly on shelves. Everything. He'd thought of everything. "The nursery is the room on the left," Damian said quietly, setting Mila's car seat down gently. "Your room is on the right. Both have blackout curtains for naps. The pediatrician's number is on the fridge, along with my personal number and emergency contacts. There's a pharmacy 2 blocks away that has your asthma prescriptions ready. They'll deliver if you call." Stop. Arya's voice cracked. "Just stop." He fell silent, watching her with those 2 perceptive eyes. "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "Why all this? This is too much. This is what you would have had if life had been fair." Damian moved closer, his hands in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. What any mother and child deserve. Basic safety. Basic dignity. This isn't basic. This is, she gestured helplessly at the apartment. This is better than the place I had before. When I was working. When I had a life. Then you deserved better then too. Arya turned away before he could see the tears. She walked to the window, looking out at the tree-lined street below. Normal people walking normal dogs. Living normal lives. She'd forgotten what normal looked like. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to accept this much help. How to not feel like I'm drowning in debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. Everyone owes something. That's how the world works. Not here. Damian's reflection appeared in the window beside hers. Not with me. This isn't a transaction, Arya. This is just help. The way help should be. No strings. No expectations. No debt. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. Behind them, Mila began to fuss, soft sounds that would escalate to full crying if ignored. I should feed her, Arya said, grateful for the excuse to move, to do something with her hands. I'll leave you to settle in. But before I go, Damian walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a folder she hadn't noticed. Information about the job training programs I mentioned. Marketing, since that's your background. They're expecting you when you're ready. No pressure. No timeline. He set the folder down and headed for the door. Damian. Arya's voice stopped him at the threshold. He turned. Thank you. The words felt inadequate, too small for what he'd done. I don't understand why you're doing this, and I don't fully trust it yet. But, thank you. Something softened in his expression. You will. Understand it, I mean. And trust it. Give it time. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made the apartment feel suddenly very large and very empty. Arya stood there for a moment, holding Mila, surrounded by more than she'd had in months. More than she'd dared to dream of having again. And for the first time in so long, she let herself cry, not from despair, but from something that felt dangerously close to hope. The first night in the apartment, Arya barely slept. Every sound was wrong. The heater kicking on instead of silence. The muffled sounds of neighbors instead of wind. The softness of the mattress instead of concrete. Safety felt like a foreign language her body had forgotten how to speak. At 3 a.m., she gave up trying and walked to the nursery where Mila slept in a crib that was probably worth more than Arya's first car. The baby was swaddled in soft blankets, her chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Alive. Warm. Safe. Arya sank into the rocking chair beside the crib and just watched her daughter breathe. This is what mothers were supposed to do. Sit in nurseries in the middle of the night, marveling at the miracle of their children. Not huddling in parking garages, praying they'd both survive until morning. She was still sitting there when morning light began to filter through the curtains. A knock at the door made her jump. Arya checked the peephole. Damian, holding coffee cups and a paper bag. She opened the door. What are you doing here? Good morning to you too. He held up the cups. I brought breakfast. May I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. Damian entered and headed straight for the kitchen, setting the coffee and bag on the counter with the familiarity of someone who'd been here before. Which, she realized he had. He'd set all this up. You didn't sleep, he observed, studying her face. How can you tell? You have the look. Like the bed is too soft. The room is too quiet. Safety feels like a trap. Arya stared at him. How do you? Because I had the same look for 2 years after my adoptive family took me in. He opened the bag and pulled out pastries. Took me that long to stop sleeping on the floor. To stop hoarding food in my closet. To stop flinching every time someone touched me. The honesty in his voice made something in her chest loosen. It gets easier, he continued, pouring coffee into mugs he pulled from the cabinet. Your body learns that safety is real. That you can trust it. But it takes time. Arya accepted the coffee he offered, wrapping her hands around the warmth. Why are you really here, Damian? You set me up in this beautiful apartment. You've done more than anyone could ask. Why do you keep coming back? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his own coffee like it held answers. Because, he said finally, I need to see it. I need to see that this works. That help given freely actually helps. That people can recover from trauma if someone just gives them a chance. He looked up at her. I need to see you heal. Maybe so I can believe I might heal too. The vulnerability in those words stole her breath. Before she could respond, Mila's cry pierced through the apartment, hungry, demanding, wonderfully alive. Arya started toward the nursery. Let me. She froze. What? Let me get her. You drink your coffee while it's hot. You can feed her, I'll just bring her to you. It was such a small thing. Such a normal thing. The kind of thing partners did for each other, family did for each other. They weren't partners. They weren't family. But Arya found herself nodding anyway. Damian disappeared into the nursery. She heard his voice, soft and low, talking to Mila. Good morning, little one. Yes, I know you're hungry. We're going to see your mama. That's right. Such a loud voice for such a tiny person. He emerged carrying Mila with a carefulness that suggested he'd been practicing. The baby was fussing but not hysterical, her face pressed against his expensive shirt. Someone wants breakfast, he said, a small smile touching his lips as he carefully transferred Mila to Arya's arms. Their hands brushed in the transfer. Both of them froze. Mila didn't care about the moment of electricity between the adults. She just wanted food, and she made that abundantly clear. Arya laughed, actually laughed, and settled onto the couch to nurse. Damian turned away, giving her privacy, busying himself with arranging pastries on a plate. You don't have to stay, Arya said. I'm sure you have important billionaire things to do. I'm exactly where I need to be. The certainty in his voice made her chest tight. They fell into comfortable silence, Arya feeding Mila, Damian puttering in the kitchen like he belonged there. It felt surreal. Domestic. Like playing house with a stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger anymore. After Mila had eaten and been burped, Damian surprised her again. Can I hold her? Arya blinked. You want to hold her? If that's okay. He looked almost embarrassed. I never get to do this. Just sit with a child. No agenda. No photo op for the board. Just holding a baby. Something about the loneliness in those words made Arya's decision easy. Of course. She showed him how to support Mila's head, how to cradle her against his chest. He was surprisingly natural at it, his large hands gentle as they held the tiny infant. Mila looked up at him with those serious dark eyes, studying this man who kept appearing in her short life. Then, without warning, she smiled. Not gas. Not a random facial movement. An actual smile, small and precious and aimed directly at Damian's face. His expression cracked open. Arya watched as Damian Blackwood, ruthless billionaire, emotional fortress, man who never stopped for anyone, completely shattered over a baby's smile. Hi, he whispered to Mila, his voice thick. Hi, sweet girl. Mila's tiny hand reached up, grasping at his face with the determination of someone who'd already survived more than most people would in a lifetime. Her fingers caught his chin, his jaw, exploring with infant curiosity. A tear rolled down Damian's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. Just let it fall while Mila held his face and smiled at him like he'd personally hung the moon. I'm sorry, he said suddenly, looking up at Arya with wet eyes. I'm sorry I wasn't there. For all of you. For everyone who needed help, and I just walked past because it was easier not to see. I'm sorry it took finding you dying to wake me up. I'm sorry. Damian. Arya moved to sit beside him on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. You can't save everyone. You can't carry the weight of every person you didn't help before you knew how. Then what do I carry? This. She gestured to Mila, to the apartment, to the fragile space they were building together. You carry this forward. You keep showing up. You keep caring. That's all any of us can do. Damian looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You're remarkable, he said softly. You nearly died 3 days ago, and you're comforting me about my guilt. How are you this strong? I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. There's a difference. Is there? Mila chose that moment to yawn, a tiny perfect yawn that broke the intensity of the moment. They both laughed, the tension releasing. I should probably let you rest, Damian said, making no move to hand Mila back or stand up. Probably, Arya agreed, making no move to take her daughter back or move away from him. They sat there in the morning light, the three of them forming a strange sort of tableau. Not a family, not quite. But something. Something that felt like the beginning of something. Mila's eyes began to drift closed, her tiny hand still clutching Damian's finger like an anchor. She trusts you, Arya said quietly. Already. Babies have instincts about people. Or she's just desperate enough to accept whoever shows up. Don't. Arya's voice was sharp. Don't diminish this. Don't diminish what you're doing. You showed up when no one else did. You stayed when you could have walked away. That matters. It matters to me. It matters to her. Damian looked at her, something vulnerable and hopeful bleeding through his carefully constructed walls. Does it matter enough that you'll let me keep showing up? That you'll let me be part of this? Part of what? This. Whatever this is. You rebuilding your life. Mila growing up safe. Me learning how to be human again. He paused. I know it's asking a lot. I know you have every reason not to trust me. But I need, his voice cracked. I need to see this through. I need to see you both thrive. I need to prove to myself that help actually helps. That second chances exist. That I'm not forever defined by the child who sat in a parking garage and couldn't save his mother. Arya reached over and covered his hand, the one not holding Mila's tiny fingers. Okay, she said simply. Okay. You can keep showing up. Just like that. Just like that. She smiled, small but real. But if you're going to keep showing up, you should probably know that I'm terrible at accepting help. I'll fight you on things. I'll push back. I'll probably try to leave at least 3 times when I feel too dependent. I can work with that. And Damian? She squeezed his hand. This isn't about saving me. Or erasing your past. This is about 3 broken people figuring out how to be less broken together. Can you handle that? He looked at her for a long moment, then down at Mila sleeping peacefully in his arms, then back at her. Yes, he said, and it sounded like a vow. I can handle that. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to the small miracle happening in apartment 4C. People went to work. Cars honked. Life continued its relentless march forward. But inside, in that sunlit living room, time seemed to slow. 3 people who'd been drowning found themselves, suddenly, unexpectedly, breathing. And for now, for this perfect, fragile now, that was enough. 6 weeks changed everything. Arya stood in front of the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her cheeks had color again. Her hair, washed, conditioned, trimmed at a salon Damian had insisted on paying for, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. The dark circles under her eyes had faded. She looked alive. She looked like the woman she'd been before the fall. Almost. The asthma inhaler sat on the counter, refilled and ready. She'd used it twice in 6 weeks instead of twice a day. Her lungs remembered how to breathe without fighting for every gasp. Behind her, through the open bathroom door, she could hear Mila babbling in her bouncer. Happy sounds, healthy sounds. The baby had gained weight, her cheeks round and pink. She smiled constantly now, especially when Damian visited. Which was every day. He'd never officially moved in, but his presence was woven through their lives like thread through fabric. Coffee in the mornings. Dinner 3 nights a week. Weekend afternoons where he'd show up with groceries or baby supplies or just himself, content to sit on the floor and play with Mila while Arya studied. The marketing courses had started 2 weeks ago. Online modules that let her work at her own pace, rebuilding skills she'd thought she'd lost forever. Damian had been right, the knowledge was still there, just buried under trauma and survival mode. It came back faster than she'd expected. Yesterday, she'd completed a mock campaign that her instructor had called brilliant. The word had made her cry. Arya splashed water on her face and headed to the living room where Mila was mid-conversation with her toes, deeply fascinated by their existence. Someone's philosophical this morning, Arya said, scooping her daughter up. Contemplating the meaning of feet. Mila responded with a gurgle that might have been agreement. A knock at the door. Arya checked her watch. 8 a.m. exactly. Damian's punctuality was almost annoying. She opened the door to find him holding coffee and something else. A folder that looked official. Morning, he said, but his smile seemed forced. Nervous. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Can we talk? Arya's stomach dropped. This is it, she thought. 6 weeks of charity and now he's done. Now he's realized this is too much, too complicated too. I have a proposal, Damian said, setting the coffee down and pulling out papers from the folder. And before you say no, just hear me out. Damian, what? I want to hire you. Arya blinked. What? For Blackwood Global. Our marketing department is adequate. But I've been reviewing your coursework, with your instructor's permission, and you're better than adequate. You're exceptional. I want you to consult on a project. Paid position. Market rate. Full benefits. She stared at him. You're offering me a job. Yes. A real job. Not charity disguised as work. His jaw tightened. This isn't charity, Arya. This is me recognizing talent and wanting to utilize it. If anything, you'd be doing me a favor. Our current campaign for the West Side development is the parking garage, she said quietly. Where you found us. Yes. He met her eyes. I'm turning it into something different. Not luxury condos. A community center. Housing for single mothers. Resources for families experiencing homelessness. But I don't know how to market it. How to tell the story without exploiting the very people I'm trying to help. Arya looked down at the papers in his hand. Contracts. Real contracts with her name on them. Why me? Because you've lived it. Because you understand what these families need in ways my entire marketing department never will. Because, he hesitated, because I trust you. The words hung between them, weighted with more than professional courtesy. I need to think about it, Arya said finally. Disappointment flickered across his face before he masked it. Of course. Take all the time you need. He left the folder on the counter and headed for the door, but Arya's voice stopped him. Damian? Where are you going right now? After this. He turned, surprised. To the office. I have back-to-back meetings until. Skip them. What? Skip them. She shifted Mila to her other hip. You show up here every morning. You bring coffee and baby supplies and job offers. But I don't actually know what you do. Where you go. Who you are outside of this, she gestured around the apartment, outside of helping me. Something vulnerable crossed his expression. Is that important? Yes. She surprised herself with the certainty. Yes, it is. If you want me to work with you, I need to understand who I'm working for. The real you. Not the hero who found me in a parking garage. Damian was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and typed quickly. Done. Meetings cancelled. He pocketed the phone and looked at her. What do you want to know? Show me. Show me a day in your life. Arya, it's boring. Offices and contracts and. Show me, she insisted. Or I'm saying no to the job right now. His eyes searched hers, looking for something. Then he nodded slowly. All right. Get dressed. Bring Mila. I'll show you my world. The Blackwood Global headquarters was everything Arya expected. Glass and steel, pristine marble, people in expensive suits moving with purpose through gleaming hallways. What she didn't expect was the looks. Everyone stared. Not at her, at Damian. Specifically at Damian carrying Mila's diaper bag over his shoulder while Arya pushed the stroller. Mr. Blackwood. His assistant Marcus appeared, tablet in hand, looking like he'd seen a ghost. I thought you cancelled your meetings? I did. I'm giving Ms. Moretti a tour. Marcus's gaze flicked to Arya, assessing, and she could practically see the questions forming. Who is this woman? Why is she here? Why does our ruthless boss look at her like? Marcus, this is Arya Moretti. She'll be consulting on the West Side project. Arya, Marcus Chun, my assistant and the only reason this company functions. Pleasure, Marcus said, though his expression suggested confusion more than pleasure. Should I reschedule the board meeting for? No. I'll handle it. Damian glanced at Arya. Actually, would you like to observe? See what I actually do all day. She should say no. Should take Mila home, maintain boundaries, not get sucked deeper into this strange orbit around Damian Blackwood. Yes, she said instead. The board meeting was brutal. Arya sat in the back corner of the conference room, Mila asleep in her stroller, and watched Damian transform. Gone was the gentleman who played with her daughter on the floor. In his place was someone sharp, commanding, ruthless. He demolished arguments with surgical precision. Shot down proposals without mercy. Demanded better results, higher profits, more efficiency. She'd seen glimpses of this version before, but never like this. Never in his element. It should have scared her. Instead, it fascinated her. Because underneath the cold exterior, she could see the calculation. Every demand he made protected workers. Every rejected proposal would have cut jobs or benefits. He wasn't ruthless for profit, he was ruthless to protect the people his board would happily sacrifice. He caught her eye once during the meeting. The coldness melted for just a second, a flash of warmth, of checking if she was okay, then snapped back into place as he returned to eviscerating a proposal to slash healthcare benefits. After the meeting, several board members filed out, but two lingered, older men in suits that cost more than her old apartment's monthly rent. Damian, one said, eyeing Arya and Mila with barely concealed disdain. A word about the West Side Project? We're concerned that turning a valuable property into a, what did you call it? A community center, is leaving significant profit on the table. It's not about profit, Richard. Everything is about profit. That's literally our job. No. Damian's voice went cold. Your job is to advise me. My job is to decide what happens with my company and my properties. The West Side Project proceeds as planned. The shareholders are doing fine. Blackwood Global posted record profits last quarter. They can afford one project that prioritizes people over margins. Richard's gaze slid to Arya again. Is this about her? The homeless woman you. Damian moved so fast Arya barely saw it. One moment he was across the room, the next he was in Richard's space, voice deadly quiet. Finish that sentence and you're off the board. Permanently. The room froze. I apologize, Richard stammered. I was out of line. Yes. You were. Damian stepped back, his composure returning like he hadn't just threatened a man twice his age. The West Side Project proceeds. End of discussion. The board members fled. Arya stood slowly, her heart hammering. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He turned to face her, and his expression was raw. I won't let anyone disrespect you. Not in my building. Not anywhere. Damian. I need to show you something. He was already moving toward the door. Come with me. They took his private elevator down, not to the lobby, but to a basement level Arya didn't know existed. The doors opened onto a completely different world. Where the upper floors were glass and marble, this level was warm wood and soft lighting. A large open space filled with computers, printers, filing cabinets. And people, lots of people, working with quiet intensity. What is this? Arya asked. The Blackwood Foundation. Damian led her through the space. My real work. The part one keeps separate from the corporate floors. They passed offices with names on the doors, homeless outreach, job training programs, medical access initiative, emergency family housing. You run all this. I fund it. They run it. He nodded to the people working. Every one of them has lived experience with poverty, homelessness, or the systems meant to help but often fail. I hire them because they understand what the people we serve need. Arya stopped walking. How many people know about this? Besides the staff? Marcus. My lawyers. No one else. Why keep it secret? Damian's expression hardened. Because the moment the board knows I'm wasting millions on charity instead of dividends, they'll find ways to stop it. Because if the media knows, it becomes a publicity stunt instead of actual help. Because, his voice dropped, I don't want credit for finally doing what I should have been doing all along. He led her to a conference room with windows overlooking the foundation floor. On the wall was a map of Chicago with pins marking locations. These are the shelters we fund, he explained. These are the job training centers. These are the families we've housed in the past 2 years. 463 families. 1,012 individuals. And it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. Arya stared at the map, at the proof that Damian Blackwood was so much more complex than she'd imagined. "Why show me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you asked who I really am." He turned to face her. "This is who I am. The man upstairs, destroying board members? That's the armor I wear to protect this. To make enough money that I can give it away to people who need it more." "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know." She studied him, really studied him. "Maybe I expected the guilt to be simpler. The hero complex to be more obvious. But you're not trying to save people to feel better about yourself, are you?" "No." He looked away. "I'm trying to save people because I was 7 years old watching my mother die, and now I have the power to make sure that doesn't happen to someone else's child. And if that's selfish, if that's about my own trauma, then fine. But the families getting housing don't care about my motives. They care about having a roof over their heads." Mila chose that moment to wake up with a cry, hungry, demanding attention. Arya lifted her from the stroller, and Damian watched them with an expression she couldn't quite name. "I'll take the job," Arya said suddenly. He blinked. "What?" "The consulting position. The West Side Project. I'll do it." She adjusted Mila against her shoulder. "But not because you saved me. Not because I owe you. Because that project matters. Because those families deserve someone who understands what they're going through. And because," she met his eyes, "I want to be part of this. Whatever this is." The hope that blazed across his face stole her breath. "Thank you," he said roughly. "Don't thank me yet. I'm going to push back on everything you suggest. I'm going to fight you on messaging and strategy. I'm going to be annoying. I'm counting on it." They stood there in the conference room overlooking the foundation, Mila between them, the city spread out beyond the windows. "Can I ask you something?" Damian said quietly. "Anything." "That night. In the parking garage. When you said, 'I can't breathe,' did you mean the asthma? Or something more?" Arya was silent for a long moment, remembering the cold, the fear, the absolute certainty that she and Mila would die invisible and forgotten. "Both," she admitted. "The asthma was killing me. But so was the weight of everything. The shame. The failure. The knowledge that the world had decided we didn't matter. That we were disposable. That our lives had no value." She looked at him. "You gave me my breath back, Damian. Not just the physical breath. The other kind. The kind that lets you believe tomorrow might be better." His hand found hers. A tentative touch, asking permission. She didn't pull away. "You gave me something too," he said. "What?" "A reason." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "For 28 years, I've been running. Building walls. Making money to prove I'd never be helpless again. But I was still that 7-year-old boy sitting in a parking garage with his dead mother, asking why no one stopped. Why no one cared." His eyes met hers. "Then I found you. And suddenly I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Because for the first time, I stopped. I cared. And it didn't destroy me, it saved me." The air between them felt electric. Dangerous. Full of possibility and risk in equal measure. Mila squirmed, breaking the moment. Always perfectly timed, this baby. Arya laughed shakily, stepping back, letting his hand slip from hers. "I should get her home. Feed her. Let you get back to work. I'll drive you." "Damian, you have." "I'll drive you," he repeated, softer. "Please." And because she was apparently incapable of saying no to this man anymore, she nodded. That night, after Mila was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Arya sat at the kitchen table with the contract Damian had left. Real employment. Real pay. Real purpose. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 weeks ago, dying, desperate, invisible. She thought about the woman she was becoming, strong, purposeful, seen. She thought about Damian, with his secret foundation and his armor and his raw need to matter in ways that money couldn't measure. And she thought about the way her heart had kicked when he'd held her hand. The way his touch had felt like coming home. Dangerous, she thought. This is dangerous. But maybe dangerous was better than dead. Maybe risk was better than safety, if safety meant never truly living. Arya picked up a pen and signed the contract. Outside, the city sparkled with lights. Millions of people living millions of lives, most of them never intersecting, never mattering to each other. But in apartment 4C, one life had intersected with another in a freezing parking garage 6 weeks ago. And neither of them would ever be the same. Resurrection, Arya thought, didn't happen all at once. It happened in moments. In breaths. In tiny steps forward into a future you'd stopped believing existed. She'd stopped believing. Damian Blackwood had made her believe again. And that was either the best thing that ever happened to her, or the most dangerous. The photo went viral on a Tuesday. Arya was feeding Mila breakfast, mashed bananas that ended up more on the baby's face than in her mouth, when her phone exploded with notifications. Text from Damian, "Don't look at the news. I'm handling it." Which, of course, made her immediately look at the news. The headline hit her like a physical blow. Billionaire secret, Damian Blackwood shacking up with homeless woman he rescued. Below it, a photo. Her and Damian leaving his building yesterday, her pushing Mila's stroller, him carrying the diaper bag. The photographer had caught a moment where he touched her lower back, guiding her through the door, an innocent gesture that looked intimate in freeze frame. The article was worse than the headline. Sources close to Blackwood Global suggest the real estate mogul has been secretly housing a formerly homeless single mother in a luxury apartment for nearly 2 months. Arya Moretti, 28, was allegedly found living in a parking garage with her infant daughter before Blackwood personally intervened. It's classic savior complex, says Dr. Rebecca Harmon, a psychiatrist specializing in trauma bonding. Wealthy men often develop unhealthy attachments to vulnerable women they've rescued. The power dynamic is inherently problematic. Questions are also being raised about Blackwood's judgment and the appropriateness of this arrangement. What happens when he gets bored? Asks one anonymous Blackwood Global employee. Does she end up back on the streets? Arya's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her phone. The comments section was worse. Hundreds of them, each one a fresh knife. Gold digger. She saw him coming a mile away. Using her baby for a payday. Bet she wasn't even really homeless. Classic poverty tourism for rich people. Her vision blurred. The apartment, this beautiful safe space, suddenly felt like a cage. Like evidence. Like proof of every ugly thing people were saying. The door burst open. Damian, still in his suit from an early meeting, face stormy. Arya. Get out. He froze. What? Get out. This was a mistake. All of it. She was shaking, words tumbling out in a rush. I should have known better. I should have known this would happen. I should have. Arya, stop. He moved toward her. She backed away. Don't. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Don't, her voice cracked. Everyone thinks I'm using you. That I seduced you for money. That I'm some kind of. I don't care what they think. Well, I do. The words came out as a shout. I care that my daughter's face is on the internet, attached to articles calling me a gold digger. I care that social services is going to see this and think I'm an unfit mother who's prostituting herself for housing. I care that. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello. Ms. Moretti? This is Rebecca Morrison from Child and Family Services. I'm sure you've seen the news this morning. I need to schedule an immediate home visit to reassess Mila's living situation. Arya's blood turned to ice. When? This afternoon. 2 o'clock. I'll need to inspect the apartment and conduct interviews with both you and Mr. Blackwood regarding the nature of your relationship. Our relationship is. We can discuss it during the visit. 2 o'clock. Ms. Moretti. Please be home. The line went dead. Arya looked at Damian, and the fear in her eyes must have told him everything. Social services, she whispered. They're coming to take her. They're going to take Mila. No. The word came out flat, absolute. They're not. You can't stop them. You can't, she was spiraling now, panic clawing at her throat. I knew this was too good to be true. I knew it couldn't last. I should have stayed invisible. At least when I was invisible, no one could take her from me. Arya. Damian was in front of her now, hands on her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. No one is taking Mila. Not today. Not ever. Do you understand? You can't promise that. Watch me. Rebecca Morrison arrived at exactly 2 o'clock with a manila folder and an expression that promised trouble. Arya had spent the past 4 hours cleaning an already spotless apartment, organizing documents, preparing herself for battle. Mila, oblivious to the crisis, napped peacefully in her crib. Damian had refused to leave. He sat on the couch, perfectly still, perfectly controlled, the ruthless businessman armor fully in place. Ms. Moretti. Mr. Blackwood. Rebecca settled into the chair across from them, pulling out forms. Thank you for making time for this visit. Did we have a choice? Arya asked. There's always a choice. Rebecca's smile didn't reach her eyes. You could refuse to cooperate, at which point I'd have grounds to petition for emergency custody. Damian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Let's start with the basics, Rebecca continued. Ms. Moretti, how long have you been living in this apartment? 8 weeks. And Mr. Blackwood provides this apartment free of charge? Yes. Does he also provide financial support? Food, clothing, medical care. I'm employed by Blackwood Global. I earn my own money. Rebecca's eyebrows rose. Employed? Since when? 2 weeks ago. I'm consulting on a community development project. How convenient. Rebecca made a note. And before that? For the first 6 weeks, you were financially dependent on Mr. Blackwood. I was recovering from hypothermia and an asthma attack. I couldn't work. So you were dependent. I was healing. Mr. Blackwood. Rebecca turned her attention to him. What is the nature of your relationship with Ms. Moretti? We're friends. Friends. The skepticism was palpable. Friends who live together. I don't live here, Damian said evenly. I have my own penthouse. But you're here frequently. Daily, according to building security logs I've reviewed. I check in on them. Make sure they have what they need. Why? The question hung in the air. Because I care about their well-being, Damian said carefully. And why do you care? What is Ms. Moretti to you? She's someone who needed help. So you help all homeless people by installing them in luxury apartments and giving them jobs? If I could, yes. Rebecca leaned forward. Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to be blunt. This situation has concerning power dynamics. You're a billionaire. She's a formerly homeless single mother. You control her housing, her employment, her stability. What happens if you have a falling out? If you decide you're done playing savior? She loses everything, and Mila loses her home. Again. That won't happen, Damian said. You can't guarantee that. Yes, I can. How? Damian pulled a document from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. This is the deed to this apartment. As of this morning, it's in Arya's name. Fully paid for. She owns it. I can't take it from her. I can't threaten her with homelessness. She has complete security regardless of our relationship. Arya stared at him. What did you do? I made sure you're safe. Permanently. Rebecca examined the document, her expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. This is legally binding. Yes. When did you do this? I had my lawyers start the paperwork 6 weeks ago. It finalized this morning. Damian looked at Arya. I was going to tell you tonight. At dinner. But circumstances changed. You gave me an apartment. Arya's voice was barely a whisper. You just gave me an apartment. Yes. Why? Because you deserve security. Because Mila deserves a home that no one can take away. Because, he glanced at Rebecca, then back at Arya. Because I need you to know that my help isn't conditional. It's not a trap. It's just help. Arya couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what he'd just done. Rebecca was silent for a long moment, studying the deed. Then she looked up at both of them. This changes things, she admitted. Ms. Moretti, you now have stable housing that can't be revoked. You have employment. Mila is healthy, well cared for, thriving. The concerns I had about dependency and power dynamics are mitigated. So you're not taking her? Aria's voice cracked. No. I'm not taking her. Rebecca closed her folder. But Ms. Moretti, I need you to understand something. The media attention on your situation is going to get worse before it gets better. People are cruel. They're going to say terrible things about you, about Mr. Blackwood, about your daughter. You need to be prepared for that. I don't care what people say, Aria said, surprised by her own certainty. Let them say whatever they want. Mila is mine. She's healthy and loved and safe. That's all that matters. Rebecca nodded slowly. Good. Hold on to that. You're going to need it. After she left, Aria sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the deed in her hands. Why didn't you tell me? She asked finally. I wanted it to be a gift. Not a strategic move. Damian's voice was rough. I wanted you to know you're free. That you can tell me to leave any time and you'll still have this. You'll still be okay. You gave me an apartment worth more than I'll earn in 10 years. I gave you security. There's a difference. Aria looked up at him, this impossibly complicated man who kept saving her in ways she didn't know she needed saving. The media is going to tear us apart, she said quietly. Let them try. Damian, this is serious. Your reputation can burn. He moved to kneel in front of her, eye level, intense. Aria, I don't care about my reputation. I care about you. I care about Mila. I care about doing the right thing even when it's complicated and messy and people don't understand. Why? The question came out raw. Why do you care so much? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and cupped her face in his hands, gentle, careful, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Because, he said softly, somewhere between finding you in that parking garage and watching you rebuild your entire life with grace and strength I can barely comprehend, I fell in love with you. The world stopped. What? I love you. The words came easier the second time. I love the way you fight for Mila. I love the way you push back against my help even when you need it. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you refuse to let trauma define you. I love, his voice cracked. I love that you make me want to be better. Not for show. Not for redemption. Just better. Aria couldn't breathe. Damian. You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel the same way. I just need you to know that this, he gestured around the apartment, this isn't about guilt or savior complex or any of the things people are saying. This is about love. Messy, complicated, probably too fast love. But love nonetheless. Tears streamed down Aria's face. You're insane. Probably. We barely know each other. I know everything that matters. The media is going to crucify us. Let them. He smiled, small and hopeful. Let the whole world attack. As long as you're willing to stand with me, I don't care. And if I'm not, she whispered. If I'm too scared? If this is too much too fast? Then I'll wait. I'll step back. I'll give you space. But Aria. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I'm not walking away. I'm not abandoning you. Even if you never love me back, I'm still here. I'm still fighting for you and Mila. That doesn't change. She should push him away. Should protect her heart. Should remember that fairy tales don't exist and billionaires don't fall in love with homeless women they rescue. But his hands were warm on her face. And his eyes were full of truth. And Mila was safe in the next room because this man had given them a home that no one could take away. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. This could end badly. Or it could end beautifully. You don't know that. No. He leaned his forehead against hers. But I'm willing to find out. Are you? From the nursery, Mila began to cry, awake from her nap, demanding attention. Damian pulled back, giving Aria space to think, to breathe, to decide. She stood and walked to the nursery, lifting her daughter from the crib. Mila immediately calmed, snuggling against her mother's shoulder. Arya looked at the life they'd built in this apartment. The safety. The possibility. The hope. Then she looked at Damian, standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression that held no armor, no walls, just raw vulnerable love. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. Okay, I'm willing to find out." She took a breath. "I can't promise I love you yet. It's too soon. Too complicated. But I can promise I'm falling. And that terrifies me. But I'm willing to fall if you promise to catch me." The smile that broke across Damian's face was blinding. "Always," he said. "I'll always catch you." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around both of them, Arya and Mila together safe. And for the first time since the parking garage, Arya let herself believe that maybe, possibly, impossibly, they were going to be okay. The next morning, Damian called a press conference. Arya watched from the Blackwood Global Building's green room, Mila in her arms, as he took the stage in front of 50 cameras and 100 journalists hungry for scandal. "He's going to do it," Marcus said from beside her, nervous. "He's really going to do it." "Do what?" Arya asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. "Burn it all down." On screen, Damian adjusted the microphone. Behind him, a screen displayed the West Side Project renderings, the community center, the housing, the hope. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here to address recent media coverage regarding my personal life and to make an announcement about the future of Blackwood Global." A reporter shouted a question. Damian ignored it. 8 weeks ago, I found a woman and her infant daughter dying in a parking garage I own. I could have called 911 and walked away. Instead, I stayed. I helped. And that decision changed my life." He paused, his eyes finding Arya through the camera, through the screen, across the distance. "The woman's name is Arya Moretti. The media has called her many things in the past 24 hours. A gold digger, a manipulator, a woman using her child for financial gain. Let me be absolutely clear, those characterizations are lies. Arya is one of the strongest, most resilient people I've ever met. She survived circumstances that would have broken most of us. She protected her daughter against impossible odds. And she's rebuilding her life with a grace and determination that humbles me daily." More shouted questions. Camera flashes. Damian continued as if the room was silent. "Yes, I provided housing. Yes, I offered employment. And yes, I have feelings for her. Deep feelings. But this isn't a scandal, it's humanity. It's what should happen when someone has resources and encounters someone in need. It's basic human decency." He stepped to the side, gesturing to the screen. "The West Side development, the parking garage where I found Arya and Mila, is being transformed into the Blackwood Family Hope Center. It will provide housing for 50 single-mother families, job training, childcare, medical care, and wraparound services designed by people with lived experience of homelessness." A render appeared, a beautiful building, warm and welcoming, with children playing in courtyards and mothers walking to job interviews. "This project will cost Blackwood Global significant profits. My board has advised against it. My investors are concerned. And frankly," Damian's voice hardened, "I don't care. Because profit without purpose is just greed. And I'm done being greedy." The room erupted. Questions shouted over questions. Cameras flashing like lightning. Damian raised his hand, and somehow, the room quieted. "One more thing." He looked directly into the camera. "Arya, if you're watching, and I know you are, I need you to hear this." Arya's breath caught. "Come out here." "What?" she gasped. Marcus was already moving. He cleared this with building security. "You're safe. But if you want to do this." I can't." "Then don't." Marcus's voice was gentle. "But I think he's giving you a choice. Stay hidden and let him take the heat alone, or stand with him and show the world they can't tear you apart." Arya looked down at Mila. At her daughter who deserved a mother brave enough to fight for their happiness. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Marcus led her through the building, down a corridor, to a door that opened onto the stage. Damian saw her immediately. Relief flooded his face. He crossed the stage in 3 strides and, in front of 50 cameras and 100 journalists, gently took Mila from Arya's arms. The room gasped. Damian Blackwood, ruthless billionaire, stood before the world holding a 3-month-old baby with the tenderness of someone who'd been doing it his whole life. Mila looked up at him and smiled. The cameras went insane. "This," Damian said, his voice carrying through the chaos, "is Mila. She's healthy because her mother refused to give up. She's safe because we live in a society that has resources. We just don't always use them correctly. She's thriving because someone finally stopped and saw her worth." He looked at Arya, standing just off stage. "Come here," he said quietly, just to her. She stepped into the lights. The noise was deafening, questions, accusations, flashes, but Damian's hand found hers and suddenly it all faded. "If protecting them destroys my reputation," Damian said, speaking to the cameras but looking at Arya, "then let it be destroyed. If loving her makes me a fool in the eyes of the world, then I'm a fool. But I'd rather be a fool with humanity than a success without a soul." A reporter yelled, "Are you saying you're in a relationship with Ms. Moretti?" "I'm saying I love her." "Yes. Is that a problem?" Stunned silence. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, "What about the power dynamics? What about them?" Arya's voice cut through the noise. Every eye turned to her. Her heart was hammering. Her palms were sweating. But Mila was safe in Damian's arms, and she was done being ashamed. "You want to talk about power dynamics?" she continued, her voice gaining strength. "Let's talk about how I was a college-educated professional who fell into homelessness because our systems failed. Let's talk about how single mothers are invisible until we become statistics. Let's talk about how the same people judging me for accepting help are the ones who walked past me dying in that parking garage." She stepped closer to Damian, to Mila, to the family they were becoming. "Yes, he helped me. Yes, he gave me housing and employment. And yes, I'm falling in love with him. If that offends you, if that breaks your narrative of how power and wealth should work, then good. Maybe it should be broken. Maybe people with resources should help people without them. Maybe that's not a scandal. Maybe that's how it should have always been." The room erupted again, but Arya no longer cared. She looked at Damian, at the man who'd stopped for her when the world kept walking. And she knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, whatever attacks, whatever judgment, whatever storms, they'd face it together. The world could scream. They'd already won. The press conference should have been the end of the story. It wasn't. 3 days later, Arya sat in Damian's office. Her office now too technically, since she'd been promoted from consultant to director of community engagement, staring at an email that made her stomach drop. Subject: West Side Project, Investor Withdrawal. Dear Mr. Blackwood, after careful consideration of recent media coverage and the associated reputational risks, Lexington Capital Partners has decided to withdraw our $15 million commitment to the West Side Family Hope Center. While we appreciate your philanthropic vision, we cannot align our brand with the current controversy surrounding this project. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Damian stood at the window, jaw tight, staring out at the city. He'd already read the email 3 times. "How bad is this?" Arya asked quietly. "Bad." He turned to face her. "We need that funding. Without it, we can only build half the housing units. Which means 25 families instead of 50. Which means we fail the people who need us most." "Yes." Marcus entered without knocking, tablet in hand, expression grim. "It's not just Lexington. 2 other investors are reassessing their commitment. The board is calling for an emergency meeting." And he hesitated. Social media is not being kind. He held up the tablet. Arya's stomach churned as she scrolled through the comments. This is what happens when you let emotions override business. Blackwood is tanking his own company for a woman he barely knows. That community center is just an expensive way to impress his girlfriend. Those families don't need housing, they need accountability. She set the tablet down before she could read more. "What do we do?" she asked. Damian's expression was hard. "We fight. We find new investors. No." Both men looked at her. "No." Damian repeated. Arya stood, an idea forming, terrifying, risky, but possible. "We don't go to billionaire investors. We go to the community." "What community?" The people who actually care about this project. The families it will help. The workers it will employ. The neighborhoods it will serve. She started pacing, the marketing executive in her waking up fully. We crowdfund. We make this about people helping people, not billionaires writing checks to feel good. Marcus shook his head. Arya, crowdfunding $15 million is impossible if we're asking for money. But what if we're not asking for money? What if we're asking for investment in their own community? What if we show them exactly where every dollar goes and let them be part of the solution? Damian's eyes lit up. You want to make it transparent. Completely transparent. Every dollar tracked. Every decision explained. We show them the blueprints, the budgets, the families who will benefit. We make it real instead of abstract. That's... Marcus trailed off, thinking. That's actually brilliant. User-generated content, community storytelling, viral potential. But there's a catch. Arya turned to Damian. It can't be your story. It can't be about the billionaire saving people. It has to be about the community saving itself. Which means... I step back. Not back. Aside. She moved closer to him. You're still the founder, still the funder for the portion we have. But the campaign needs a different face. Someone who's lived this. Someone the community will trust. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You. Me. The word felt like jumping off a cliff. I tell my story. The real story. How I went from marketing executive to homeless to here. I become the face of the campaign. I show people that recovery is possible, that help works, that we're all one bad month away from needing a place like this. The media will eviscerate you, Damian said quietly. They're already calling you a gold digger. This will make it worse. Let them. Arya lifted her chin. I'm done hiding. I'm done being ashamed. If my story can help 25 families get housing, then it's worth it. Marcus was already typing on his tablet. We'd need a video. Something raw, authentic. We'd need social media strategy, influencer outreach, community partnerships. I can do it, Arya said. All of it. This is what I'm good at. What I was good at before everything fell apart. Let me prove I'm more than the woman Damian rescued. Let me be the woman who fights back. Damian studied her for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and cupped her face in his hands. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. And for Mila. And for every mother sitting in a parking garage right now thinking the world has decided she doesn't matter. Her voice strengthened. I'm doing it because I have a platform now, whether I wanted one or not. Might as well use it for something that matters. He kissed her forehead, gentle, proud, full of love. Okay, he said. Let's change the world. They filmed the video in the parking garage. Not the renovated version, the actual structure where Damian had found her, cold and raw and exactly as it had been that night 2 months ago. Arya stood in the spot where she'd nearly died, Mila in her arms, and looked directly into the camera. My name is Arya Moretti, she began, her voice steady despite the memories clawing at her. 2 months ago, I was here with my 3-month-old daughter dying. Not metaphorically. Literally dying from an asthma attack I couldn't treat because I couldn't afford medication. Freezing because I had nowhere warm to take my baby. Invisible because society had decided we didn't matter. She walked slowly through the space, the camera following. I wasn't always homeless. I had a degree, a career, an apartment. I was someone people would have called successful. But pregnancy complications, medical bills, a layoff, and an absent partner, that's all it took. 4 things. And suddenly I was here, begging the universe to let my daughter survive even if I didn't. She stopped at the concrete pillar where she'd collapsed. Someone found us. Someone stopped. Someone cared enough to not just call for help but to stay with us, to fight for us, to give us a chance to rebuild. She looked at the camera. That person happened to be a billionaire. But here's what I've learned. We shouldn't need billionaires to save us. We should have systems that catch people before they fall this far. We should have communities that protect their most vulnerable. We should have a society where a mother and baby dying in a parking garage is unthinkable, not because it's unlikely, but because we've made it impossible. She shifted Mila to her other hip. The West Side Family Hope Center is being built right here. In this garage. In this place of death, we're creating life. 50 apartments for single mother families. Job training. Child care. Medical care. Everything I needed and couldn't find, we're building for the next woman who finds herself here. Her voice grew stronger. But we need help. Not from billionaires writing checks. We need you. We need the community to invest in itself. $10. $25. Whatever you can afford. Every dollar goes directly to building homes for families who need them. And we're not just asking for money, we're asking you to be part of the solution. To say that mothers matter. That children matter. That no one should be invisible. She walked toward the camera until her face filled the frame. I'm not asking you to save anyone. I'm asking you to stand with us. To build with us. To create the world we all deserve, where help is available before crisis becomes catastrophe. Where community means we catch each other when we fall. She held up her phone, showing the donation page. This is the link. Every donor gets updates, gets to see exactly where their money goes, gets to be part of this transformation. From death to life. From despair to hope. From invisible to seen. A pause, then softer. 2 months ago, I whispered I can't breathe in this garage, thinking no one would hear. Someone did. Now I'm asking you to hear the thousands of other voices whispering the same thing in parking garages and doorways and cars across the city. Hear them. Help them. Be the someone who stops. She shifted Mila so the baby's face was visible. Her name is Mila. She survived this place. Let's make sure no other child has to. Cut to black. The video went viral in 6 hours. Not the kind of viral that destroys, the kind that builds. Within 24 hours, they'd raised $200,000. Within 3 days, $2 million. Local businesses started calling, offering services. Construction companies donated labor. Furniture stores pledged furnishings. The community saw itself in Aria's story and responded with overwhelming generosity. A week later, an envelope arrived at Damian's office. Inside, a check for $50,000 and a note. I was that mother 20 years ago. No one stopped for me. I survived anyway, barely. This is for the ones who come after. Thank you for seeing us. Aria cried reading it. They were sitting in the Blackwood Foundation office, surrounded by printouts of donations, messages of support, offers of help. Mila played on a blanket on the floor, reaching for toys that Marcus kept strategically placing just out of reach to encourage her development. We're going to hit the goal, Marcus said, studying the numbers. At this rate, we'll have full funding within a month. Maybe more. The community came through, Aria said, still holding the anonymous donor's note. They always do when you give them the chance. Damian watched her from across the room, this woman who'd gone from victim to survivor to leader in the span of 2 months. Who'd taken her pain and transformed it into purpose. You did this, he said quietly. We did this. No. He crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. You did this. You took the worst night of your life and turned it into hope for hundreds of families. You took shame and transformed it into strength. You, his voice cracked, you're remarkable. She touched his face, this man who'd saved her and let her save herself in equal measure. We're remarkable, she corrected. Together. A news alert pinged on Marcus's tablet. He glanced at it, then smiled. You might want to see this. He turned the screen to show a headline. Community rallies behind West Side Project. Crowdfunding campaign raises $5 million in 1 week. Below it, photos from the press conference, but not the ones Aria expected. Not her and Damian. Instead, photos of families holding signs. We are Aria. Housing is a human right. Mothers matter. Community over profit. They're holding rallies, Marcus explained. Organizing neighborhood fundraisers. Churches, schools, community centers. Everyone's mobilizing. You started a movement. Aria stared at the photos, overwhelmed. I just told my story. You told our story, a voice said from the doorway. They turned to see a woman in her 30s, dressed in neat but worn clothes, a toddler on her hip. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the woman continued, nervous. "The front desk said I could come back. My name is Jennifer. I'm homeless. Living in my car with my son. I saw your video and tears filled her eyes. I needed to thank you. For seeing us. For speaking for us. For making people understand we're not lazy or stupid," or her voice broke. "We're just people who fell and need help getting up." Arya stood and crossed to her, understanding flooding through her. "What's your son's name?" "Marcus." She smiled through tears at the baby. "He's 8 months old. Would you like to sit down? We have coffee. And toys." Jennifer hesitated. "I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother." Arya gently guided her to the couch. "You're the reason we're doing this. Tell me your story." As Jennifer settled in, beginning to talk, Damian caught Arya's eye. The look he gave her was full of awe and love and pride. "This is who you were always meant to be," his expression said. And watching Arya listen to Jennifer's story with the compassion of someone who'd lived it, offering resources and hope and dignity, Damian knew with absolute certainty. He wasn't just in love with her. He was in awe of her. That night, after Mila was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Arya found Damian on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "You okay?" she asked, sliding her arms around him from behind. He covered her hands with his. "I'm perfect. Better than perfect. I'm watching you become who you were always meant to be. I'm just helping people. You're leading a movement. There's a difference." He turned in her arms to face her. "The board called today. They want to make the foundation's work public. Officially merge it with Blackwood Global. Make community investment part of our core mission." "What did you say?" "I said yes. On one condition." "What condition?" "That you run it." He smiled at her surprise. "Arya, you've done in 2 weeks what I couldn't do in 10 years. You've made people care. You've made them act. You've transformed how the city sees homelessness and poverty and the people experiencing it. I want you to lead this. Officially. As executive director." "Damian, I can't." "Why not?" "Because she hesitated, old fears rising. "Because I was homeless 2 months ago. Because I don't have the credentials. Because people will say I only got the job because I'm sleeping with the CEO." "Are you sleeping with the CEO?" His eyes glinted with mischief. "No. We're not," she blushed. "Then they can't say that." He grew serious. "Arya, you have the only credential that matters. You've lived it. You understand what these families need because you were them. And you're not homeless anymore, you're a survivor who's rebuilding. That makes you the perfect person to lead." She wanted to argue. To list all the reasons she wasn't qualified, wasn't ready, wasn't enough. But then she thought of Jennifer and her son Marcus. Of the woman who'd sent the $50,000 check. Of the thousands of families who'd seen themselves in her story and responded with hope. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, I'll do it." Damian's smile was brilliant. Yeah, she laughed. "But I'm going to need help. And training. And probably therapy because imposter syndrome is real." Done, and already scheduled." He pulled her closer. "Arya, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I love you. Not because you're broken and I want to fix you. Not because saving you makes me feel better about my past. I love you because you're strong and brave and brilliant. Because you turn pain into purpose. Because you make me want to be better just by existing." She reached up to touch his face, this man who'd stopped for her when the world kept walking. "I love you too," she said, and the words came easier than she'd expected. "I'm still scared. Still figuring out how to trust this. But I love you. I love your heart and your hidden foundation and the way you hold Mila like she's made of glass. I love that you gave me my life back and then stepped aside so I could live it on my own terms." He kissed her then, soft, sweet, full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "We're really doing this," Arya said. "Building a center. Running a foundation. Falling in love in front of the entire world. Terrifying, isn't it?" Completely. She grinned. Want to do it anyway? With you? Always. Below them, the city sparkled with light. Somewhere out there, families were struggling. Mothers were whispering, "I can't breathe," into the darkness. Children were going hungry. But also, communities were rallying. Donations were pouring in. Hope was building. One parking garage at a time. One family at a time. One breath at a time. And in apartment 4C, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment stood together on a balcony, looking toward a future they were building together. Not perfect, but possible. And that was enough. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who apologized before handing it to Aria. Petition for custody, Jake Sullivan versus Aria Moretti. Aria's hands shook so badly she could barely read the words. Mr. Sullivan, the biological father of the minor child Mila Moretti, hereby petitions the court for full custody based on the mother's demonstrated inability to provide stable housing and appropriate care, as evidenced by her recent homelessness and current dependence on a romantic partner for financial support. The paper fell from her hands. Aria. Damian emerged from the kitchen, took one look at her face, and was instantly at her side. What happened? She couldn't speak. Could only point at the papers scattered on the floor. He read them, his expression darkening with each line. When he looked up, his eyes were full of cold fury. He has no right. He abandoned you. He's never even met Mila. But he's her biological father. Aria's voice came out hollow. And according to this, I'm an unfit mother who was homeless and is now living off her billionaire boyfriend. He's arguing that Mila would be better off with him and his stable two-parent household. She laughed bitterly. He got married. He has a stable life. And now he wants my daughter. Our daughter. Damian caught himself. I'm sorry. I know I'm not. I don't have legal. You're more her father than he'll ever be. The fierceness in her voice surprised them both. You were there for her first smile. Her first laugh. You held her when she had that apnea episode. Her voice cracked. You showed up. That makes you her father more than DNA ever could. Damian pulled her into his arms, and she let herself break for a moment against his chest. We'll fight this, he said firmly. I'll get you the best family law attorney in the state. We'll bury him in legal. No. He pulled back to look at her. What? No lawyers. Not your lawyers. She wiped her eyes, something hardening inside her. If I win this with your money, with your power, then he's right. Then I am dependent on you. Then I haven't actually rebuilt my life, I've just traded one form of instability for another. Aria, that's not. I need to do this myself. She picked up the papers, her hand steadier now. I need to stand in that courtroom and prove that I'm a good mother, not because a billionaire says so, but because it's true. Because I kept my daughter alive against impossible odds. Because I rebuilt my life. Because I'm strong enough to protect her from anyone, including her own father. Damian studied her face. This isn't about pride. No. It's about proof. For me. I need to know I can do this without you fighting my battles for me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. But I'm coming to court with you. Not as your lawyer. Not as your money. Just as someone who loves you and Mila and wants to be there. I can live with that. Jake Sullivan looked exactly as Aria remembered and nothing like she'd expected. He sat across the courtroom with his lawyer, expensive suit, wedding ring catching the light, the picture of stability and success. His new wife sat behind him, perfectly coiffed, radiating judgment. Aria had dressed carefully that morning, professional but not expensive. The outfit she'd bought with her own money from her own paycheck. Her hair pulled back neatly. Minimal makeup. She looked like what she was, a working mother doing her best. Damian sat in the gallery behind her, a silent presence. Mila was with a court-appointed supervisor in another room, being evaluated. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind but assessing eyes, reviewed the files. Mr. Sullivan, she began. You're petitioning for full custody of a child you've never met. A child whose mother you abandoned while she was pregnant. Can you explain your reasoning? Jake's lawyer stood. Your Honor, Mr. Sullivan was young and made mistakes. He's since matured, married, and established a stable home. He's prepared to offer Mila a two-parent household with financial security and... I asked Mr. Sullivan, counselor. Not you. The judge's tone was sharp. Mr. Sullivan? Jake stood, and Arya felt a surge of the old rage. This man who'd left her. Who'd disappeared when she'd needed him most. Who'd let his daughter nearly die without a second thought. Your Honor, Jake said smoothly, I made mistakes. I was scared and young and I ran. I regret that deeply. But when I saw the news coverage, saw that Arya had been homeless with my daughter, I realized I needed to step up. Mila deserves stability. She deserves a father who can provide for her without depending on, he glanced at Damian, romantic partners for survival. And you believe Ms. Moretti is unfit? I believe she's in a vulnerable position. She was homeless 2 months ago. She's now living in an apartment provided by her boyfriend, working for his company. What happens when that relationship ends? Where does that leave Mila? The courtroom was silent. The judge turned to Arya. Ms. Moretti? Your response. Arya stood, her heart hammering but her voice steady. Your Honor, Mr. Sullivan is right about one thing. I was homeless. I was dying in a parking garage with my daughter because every system that was supposed to catch us failed. Because I had complications during pregnancy that cost me my job. Because medical bills destroyed my credit. Because the father of my child, she looked directly at Jake, vanished. She took a breath. But he's wrong about everything else. I didn't give up. I didn't abandon Mila. I protected her with my own body in that garage. I kept her warm. I kept her alive. And when someone finally helped us, I didn't just accept charity, I rebuilt my entire life. She pulled documents from her folder. This is the deed to my apartment. It's in my name. I own it. This is my employment contract with Blackwood Global. I'm the executive director of the Blackwood Foundation, earning a market-rate salary with benefits. This is Mila's medical records, perfect health, all vaccinations up to date, regular pediatrician visits. This is a letter from my therapist confirming I'm actively working through my trauma. And this, she held up the final document, is a letter from Child and Family Services stating that Mila is thriving in my care and my home has been repeatedly approved as safe and appropriate. She set the papers on the judge's bench. I'm not dependent on anyone, Your Honor. I have my own home, my own income, my own life. Yes, I'm in a relationship. Yes, that person helped me when I needed it. But I'm not defined by that help. I'm defined by what I did with it, which was to transform my life and now help hundreds of other families do the same. Your Honor, Jake's lawyer interjected. I'm not finished. Arya's voice cut through the courtroom. Mr. Sullivan wants to talk about stability? Let's talk about it. Where was his stability when I was in the emergency room with pregnancy complications? Where was his stability when I was fired for missing work due to medical issues? Where was his stability when I was sleeping in my car, then in shelters, then in that parking garage? She turned to face Jake directly. You weren't there. You didn't call. You didn't send a single dollar for diapers or formula or medical care. You didn't check if your daughter was alive or dead. You saw us on the news and suddenly decided you wanted to be a father. Her voice broke. That's not fatherhood. That's guilt. Or worse, it's greed. Because the media coverage made Mila interesting now. Made her valuable. Ms. Moretti, that's not, Jake started. Be silent. The judge's voice was ice. You'll have your turn. Continue, Ms. Moretti. Arya took a shaky breath. I love my daughter more than my own life. I proved that when I nearly died protecting her. Mr. Sullivan has proved nothing except that he's good at showing up when it's convenient. That's not enough. It will never be enough. She sat down, trembling. The judge was silent for a long moment, studying both parties. Mr. Sullivan, do you have any documentation showing you've attempted to contact Ms. Moretti since your daughter's birth? Any child support payments? Any evidence of interest in Mila's well-being before the media coverage? Jake's lawyer whispered something urgent. No, Your Honor, Jake admitted. But I'm prepared to start now. I'm prepared to be the father Mila deserves. The father she deserves has been showing up for her since the night she almost died. The judge's voice was sharp. And from what I can see, it's not you. She closed the file. Mr. Sullivan, your petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, given your abandonment and the trauma this petition has caused, I'm terminating your parental rights entirely unless you can show cause why I shouldn't. You have 30 days to respond with evidence of previous involvement in Mila's life. Without such evidence, your rights will be permanently terminated and you will be required to pay back child support from the date of Mila's birth. Jake's face went white. Your Honor, you can't. I absolutely can. You don't get to abandon a child and then swoop in demanding custody when it suits you. That's not how this works. She turned to Arya. Ms. Moretti, I'm ruling in your favor. Full custody remains with you. If Mr. Sullivan attempts further contact without court approval, you have grounds for a restraining order. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Arya walked out of the courtroom on shaking legs. Damian was immediately at her side, but before he could speak, she turned and walked straight to Jake, who stood with his lawyer looking shell-shocked. Arya, Jake started. No. Her voice was quiet but absolute. You don't get to talk to me. You don't get to explain or justify or ask for second chances. You left us. You let us nearly die. And then you tried to take my daughter because your guilty conscience finally caught up with you or because you wanted to ride our media coverage. I don't care which. I made mistakes. You made choices. And now you live with them. She stepped closer. Mila will never know you. When she asks about her father someday, I'll tell her the truth, that you weren't strong enough to stay. But I'll also tell her about the man who was. The man who stopped in a parking garage and decided we mattered. The man who's been there for every late-night feeding, every diaper change, every smile. That man is her father. Not you. She turned and walked away, leaving Jake standing in the courthouse hallway, finally understanding what he'd lost. Damian caught up with her outside, where the afternoon sun felt impossibly bright after the fluorescent courtroom lights. You were incredible, he said. I was terrified. You were both. He pulled her into his arms. But Arya? You did it. You stood there and proved you didn't need me to fight your battles. You proved you're strong enough, capable enough, worthy enough all on your own. She pulled back to look at him. But I do need you. Just not to fight for me. I need you to stand with me. To catch me when I fall. To remind me I'm not alone. Is that enough? That's everything. He cupped her face in his hands. You know what the beautiful thing is? You didn't need my money or my lawyers or my power. But you wanted me. Just me. The person, not the resources. That's the difference between dependence and love. Is it enough? She whispered. Am I enough? Without the tragic backstory, without the viral video, without the... Arya. He kissed her, soft and thorough and full of certainty. You've always been enough. You were enough when you were a marketing executive. You were enough when you were homeless. You're enough now. The circumstances changed. You didn't. You've always been this strong, this brilliant, this worthy. You just needed someone to see it. Tears streamed down her face. Relief, joy, release. I love you, she said. Not because you saved me. Not because you gave me a home or a job or stability. I love you because you see me. The real me. And you love her anyway. I love her because of who she is. Because she's fierce and stubborn and refuses to be defined by her worst moments. He smiled. Also because she's really, really attractive when she's telling off her ex in a courtroom. She laughed through her tears. Shut up. Make me. She kissed him, right there on the courthouse steps, in front of the lawyers and the journalists who'd been covering the case and anyone else who cared to watch. Let them see. Let them judge. Let the world have its opinions. She'd just won the most important battle of her life, and she'd done it on her own terms. Everything else was just noise. That night, after Mila was asleep and the adrenaline had finally worn off, Arya found Damian in the living room, staring at something on his phone. What are you looking at? He held up the screen. A photo, grainy, old, faded. A woman with kind eyes holding a small boy in front of a rusted Honda Civic. Your mother, Arya said softly. Catherine Blackwood. His voice was rough. I don't look at this often. It hurts too much. But tonight I wanted to see her. Wanted to tell her. He stopped, struggling. Arya sat beside him, taking his hand. Tell her what? That I finally understand. Why she fought so hard. Why she chose food over insulin, survival over treatment. She wasn't giving up. She was protecting me. Making sure I had one more day, even if it cost her everything. Tears slid down his face. I spent 28 years angry at her for dying. For not fighting harder. For leaving me. But she didn't leave me. She gave everything she had so I could survive. She'd be so proud of you. Would she? He looked at Arya. I built an empire on the promise to never be helpless again. But all that wealth, all that power, I used it to isolate myself. To avoid feeling what I felt in that parking garage when she died. I turned into someone who walked past people like her. Like you. Like everyone who needed help. How could she be proud of that? Because you changed. Arya squeezed his hand. You stopped walking past. You stopped. You saw us. And now you're building a center in the exact place where you found us, where you learned to care again. That's not betraying her memory. That's honoring it. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I wish she could meet you. Could meet Mila. Could see that the little boy she saved grew up and finally figured out how to save someone else. She knows, Arya whispered. Somehow I think she knows. And I think maybe she sent you to that garage that night. Made sure you'd be there. Made sure you'd stop. You believe in fate. I believe in mothers who love their children enough to move mountains. Even from beyond the grave. They sat together in the quiet apartment, holding each other, honoring the ghosts that had brought them together. Catherine, who died so her son could live. Jake, who'd chosen to leave and lost everything. The person Arya had been in that parking garage, dying but defiant. The person Damian had been, walking through life but not living it. All the versions of themselves they'd had to lose to become who they were now. Thank you, Damian said finally. For what? For letting me be part of your story. For not needing me but choosing me anyway. For showing me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. And sometimes, it's about letting someone help you stand. Arya kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. We helped each other stand, she said. That's what love is. Not rescue. Partnership. Partnership, he repeated, like he was tasting the word. I like that. Good. She smiled. Because I'm about to partner with you on something that's going to seem crazy. What? I want to expand the foundation. Not just Chicago. Nationally. I want to build hope centers in every major city. I want to create a network where families can find help before they end up in parking garages. And I want to train other survivors to lead these centers. To prove that lived experience is the most valuable credential. He stared at her. That's ambitious. Too ambitious? No. He kissed her forehead. It's perfect. It's you. Let's do it. Just like that. Just like that. He pulled her closer. You dream it, I'll fund it, we'll build it together. That's the partnership. Arya laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief and hope. 2 months ago, she'd been dying in a parking garage, invisible to the world. Now she was planning to change that world. Not despite her trauma. Because of it. And that made all the difference. 6 months later. Arya stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her dress for the 10th time. Mila, now 9 months old and determined to crawl everywhere, made happy noises from her playpen, completely unaware that tonight would change everything. You look beautiful, Damian said from the doorway, and Arya turned to find him in a perfectly tailored suit, eyes soft with affection. It's just the opening ceremony, she said, smoothing her dress nervously. I don't know why I'm so anxious. Because it matters. He crossed the room and took her hands. The Blackwood Family Hope Center opens tonight. The parking garage where we met becomes something new. Where you almost died, 50 families will find life. That's worth being anxious about. She squeezed his hands. What if something goes wrong? What if the donors are disappointed, or the families don't come, or... Arya. He kissed her forehead. Breathe. She did. In and out. The asthma that had nearly killed her was now managed, controlled, no longer a threat. Breathing had become easy again. So many things had become easy again. Ready? He asked. She looked around their apartment, their home, where Mila took her first crawling attempts, where they ate breakfast together every morning, where they built a life that once seemed impossible. Ready, she said. The parking garage had been completely transformed. Where there had been cold concrete and fluorescent lights, there was now warm brick and soft Edison bulbs. Where wind had whipped through open levels, there were now walls and windows. Where a woman had whispered, "I can't breathe," there was now a beautiful community center with apartments above, a childcare facility, a medical clinic, and hope woven into every corner. The lobby was filled with people, donors, community members, politicians, media, and most importantly, the families who would call this place home. Arya had insisted they be the guests of honor, not afterthoughts. She moved through the crowd, greeting people, accepting congratulations, but her mind was elsewhere. Damian had been acting strange all day, distracted, nervous, checking his phone constantly. He disappeared 20 minutes ago, claiming he needed to handle something. Marcus appeared at her elbow. The speeches are about to start. We need you and Damian on stage in 5 minutes. Where is he? He asked me to tell you to meet him on level 3. The original site. Arya's heart skipped. Why? Marcus smiled mysteriously. He said you'd understand when you got there. Arya took the elevator alone, Mila on her hip, to level 3. The doors opened onto a space that took her breath away. It had been preserved exactly as it was, the concrete pillar, the fluorescent lights, even some of the weathering on the walls. But surrounding it, the space had been transformed into something beautiful. Soft lights created a warm glow. Photographs lined the walls, before and after shots of the garage, images of the families it would serve, pictures of Arya and Mila and Damian from the past 6 months. And in the center, exactly where she'd collapsed that night, stood Damian. He wore the same expression he'd had that first night, intense, vulnerable, determined. What is this? Arya asked, her voice echoing in the quiet space. Do you remember what I said that night? Damian asked quietly. When I lifted the cloth and saw Mila? You said no one was supposed to be here tonight. No one was supposed to be here. He moved closer. But you were. And it changed everything. It changed me. It saved me in ways I'm still understanding. He gestured to the space around them. This is where it all began. Where I found you. Where I stopped being the man who walked past and became the man who stopped. I wanted to preserve it, this exact spot, as a reminder. A reminder of what? That the worst moments can become the best beginnings. That death can transform into life. That sometimes, the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, even when it makes no sense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something fabric, familiar, stained, threadbare. The blanket. The one Arya had wrapped around Mila that night. The donation bin blanket that had barely protected her daughter from the cold. You kept it. Arya whispered, tears already forming. I kept it. His voice was rough. The hospital tried to throw it away. I asked them not to. I had it cleaned and preserved because it represented something important. He spread the blanket on the ground between them, exactly where Mila had laid that night. It represented a mother's love. Fierce, uncompromising, willing to fight impossible odds. It represented survival against a world that had decided you didn't matter. It represented, his voice cracked, everything I'd been looking for my whole life without knowing I was looking. He knelt beside the blanket. That night, when I lifted this cloth, I found a baby. Tonight, he folded back one corner. Underneath, nestled in the fabric, was a small velvet box. Arya's breath caught. Tonight, Damian continued, opening the box to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. I'm asking if you'll let me lift this cloth for the rest of our lives. If you'll let me be the one who shows up, who stays, who sees you even when the world looks away. He looked up at her, and his eyes were full of tears and hope and love. Arya Moretti, you are the strongest, most remarkable person I've ever met. You've transformed tragedy into purpose. You've built hope from despair. You've shown me what love actually means. Not rescue, not dependence, but partnership. Two broken people choosing to be less broken together. He took a shaky breath. That night, when you said, "I can't breathe," my world stopped. Now I'm asking, his voice broke with emotion, will you breathe the rest of your life with me? Will you marry me? Mila chose that moment to reach for the ring box, trying to grab the shiny object, and they both laughed through their tears. She says yes, Arya managed. And what do you say? Arya knelt beside him, careful of Milo on her hip, and cupped his face in her free hand. 6 months ago, I would have said this is too fast, too complicated, too impossible. And now I know that love doesn't follow timelines. That some people are meant to find each other in parking garages at exactly the right wrong moment. That fate is real, and it sounds like footsteps following a whisper in the dark. She smiled through her tears. Yes, Damian. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll breathe with you. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, like he'd somehow known, and then pulled both her and Mila into his arms. They stayed there for a long moment, the three of them, in the exact spot where everything had changed. Then Damian pulled back slightly and looked at Mila, who was examining the ring on Arya's finger with intense baby focus. What do you think, little one? He asked. Should I be your dad? Officially. Mila responded by grabbing his face with both hands and planting a wet, sloppy baby kiss on his nose. I'm taking that as a yes, he laughed. She's had better taste than me from the beginning, Arya said. She knew you were worth keeping before I did. Smart girl. He kissed Mila's head, then Arya's lips. Just like her mother. The opening ceremony was everything Arya had hoped for and more. She stood on stage with Damian, wearing her ring, looking out at hundreds of faces, rich and poor, powerful and powerless, all gathered to witness the transformation of a parking garage into a beacon of hope. 6 months ago, Arya began, her voice carrying through the space, I stood in this building and whispered, I can't breathe. I was dying. My daughter was dying. And the world had decided we didn't matter. She paused, finding strength in Damian's presence beside her. But someone stopped. Someone heard. Someone decided we did matter. And that decision, that single act of stopping, changed everything. She gestured to the building around them. This center isn't about charity. It's about community. It's about recognizing that we're all one bad month, one medical crisis, one betrayal away from needing help. It's about building systems that catch people before they fall into parking garages. And it's about recognizing that the people who've survived poverty and homelessness aren't statistics or sob stories. They're experts. They're leaders. They're the ones who should be guiding the solutions. Applause rippled through the crowd. Tonight, 50 families move into their new homes. 50 mothers will tuck their children into warm beds. 50 families will have access to childcare, medical care, job training, and support. But this is just the beginning. She looked at Damian, who nodded encouragement. I'm proud to announce that the Blackwood Foundation is expanding nationwide. We're opening Hope Centers in 10 cities over the next 2 years, with more to follow. And every single center will be led by someone with lived experience of homelessness. Because you can't solve a problem you've never lived. The applause grew louder. But most importantly, Arya continued, her voice growing emotional, I want to say this to anyone watching who's sitting in a car tonight, or in a doorway, or in a parking garage whispering, I can't breathe, you matter. Your life has value. Your struggle is real and it's not your fault. And somewhere, someone is going to stop for you. Someone is going to see you. You just have to hold on long enough for them to find you. She wiped her eyes. Hold on. Help is coming. You matter. The crowd rose to its feet, applause thundering through the space. Damian took the microphone, his hand finding Arya's. I have one more announcement, he said, and his voice carried both joy and nervousness. Arya Moretti has agreed to marry me. The applause turned to cheers. Which means, he continued, smiling at her, that the woman I found dying in a parking garage 6 months ago is going to be my wife. The baby I held while she struggled to breathe is going to be my daughter. And the family we've built from impossible circumstances is going to be permanent. He turned to face the crowd fully. Love isn't always pretty. It's not always convenient. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and starts in the worst possible way. But it's real. And it's worth fighting for. Arya fought for Mila. I fought for them. And now we fight together, for every family in this building, in this city, in this country who needs someone to stop and see them. He lifted their joined hands. This is what happens when we stop. When we care. When we choose humanity over profit, community over isolation, love over indifference. This, he gestured to the transformed building, to the families gathered, to the future they were building, this is what's possible. Late that night, after the ceremony ended and the guests dispersed and the families began moving into their new homes, Arya and Damian returned to level 3. The blanket was still there, spread on the ground where they'd gotten engaged hours earlier. They sat beside it, Mila asleep in Damian's arms, and looked at the space that had changed their lives. I have something for you, Arya said. She pulled out her phone and opened a document, the first draft of something she'd been working on for weeks. What is this? Damian asked. A book. She smiled at his surprise. My story. Our story. From that night in the parking garage to tonight. I want to publish it. Not for fame or money, but so other people know it's possible. That you can survive the worst night of your life and still build something beautiful. Arya, he struggled for words. That's incredible. What are you going to call it? She looked at him, at the ring on her finger, at their daughter sleeping peacefully, at the life they'd built from death and despair. I can't breathe, she said quietly. Because that's where it started. With a whisper in the dark. With a plea the world almost ignored. With breath that almost stopped but didn't. Because someone lifted the cloth, Damian added softly. Because you lifted the cloth. She leaned against his shoulder. And everything changed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through the windows. Somewhere out there, other families were struggling. Other mothers were whispering pleas into the darkness. Other children were depending on someone, anyone, to stop and see them. But here, in this transformed parking garage, 50 families had found safety. Hope. Home. And 2 people who'd met in the darkest moment had found each other. Can I ask you something? Damian said. Anything. Do you still think about that night? The cold? The fear? Arya was quiet for a moment, remembering. The concrete against her back. The weight of Mila in her arms. The certainty that they were going to die. Yes, she admitted. But not the way I used to. I used to remember it as the worst night of my life. The night I failed. The night I almost lost everything. And now I remember it as the night everything began. She looked at him. The night someone finally saw me. The night I learned that miracles are real and they sound like footsteps in the dark. The night I discovered I was stronger than I ever imagined possible. She touched his face gently. That night, I whispered I can't breathe and thought no one would hear. But you did. You stopped. You stayed. You gave me my breath back, all of it. The physical breath. The emotional breath. The breath of hope and possibility and future. You gave me something too, Damian said quietly. What? A reason. His eyes were bright with emotion. For 28 years, I survived. I succeeded. I built an empire. But I wasn't living. I was just existing between the memory of my mother dying and the fear it would happen to me. You showed me the difference between survival and life. Between success and purpose. Between building walls and building bridges. He shifted Mila carefully and took Arya's hand. That night in the parking garage, we both stopped breathing. You from asthma. Me from fear. And then, somehow, we learned to breathe again. Together. Arya kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. We should probably head home, she said eventually. Mila's going to wake up cranky if we keep her out too late. Home, Damian repeated, smiling. I love that word. Me too. They stood, carefully folding the blanket, the cloth that had witnessed the worst and best moments of their lives. Damian tucked it under his arm. What are you going to do with that? Arya asked. Frame it. Hang it in our home. Remind us where we came from and how far we've come. That's sentimental. I'm sentimental now. You made me sentimental. He grinned. It's your fault. She laughed and took his free hand as they walked to the elevator. Behind them, level 3 stood empty and transformed, no longer a place of death but a memorial to survival. To the night, everything changed. To the moment when fate intervened and two lives collided in the darkness. The elevator doors closed. And in the quiet of the empty level, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear it. A whisper. I can't breathe. And an answer. Stay with me. I won't let you die. The echo of a conversation that changed 2 lives, 50 families, and started a movement that would spread across the country. All because someone stopped. All because someone cared. All because love, real, messy, complicated, beautiful love, was born in the most impossible place. A parking garage. A whisper. A lifted cloth. And everything that came after. 2 years later. The photo on the cover of Time magazine showed 3 people, a woman holding a toddler, a man beside them, all 3 smiling in front of a building that had once been a parking garage. The headline read, "The Hope Revolution, How Aria Moretti Blackwood Transformed America's Approach to Homelessness." Inside, the article detailed the expansion of Blackwood Family Hope Centers across 30 cities. It profiled families who'd found housing, mothers who'd rebuilt their lives, children who'd been given a chance to thrive. But the most powerful part was the opening paragraph. I can't breathe, Aria Moretti whispered in a Chicago parking garage 2 years ago, dying with her infant daughter in her arms. Today, she's the voice of a movement that's changing how America thinks about poverty, homelessness, and the value of human life. And it all started because one person stopped. Aria sat in their living room, a house now, not an apartment, with a yard where Mila played, reading the article while Damian cooked breakfast and their daughter sang off key songs about dinosaurs. You're famous, Damian called from the kitchen. We're famous, she corrected. This was always we. Yes, but you're the one time wanted on the cover. I'm just the guy who showed up. You're the guy who stopped. She set the magazine down and walked to the kitchen, wrapping her arms around him from behind. That's more important than anything else. Mila ran in, pigtails bouncing, holding up a drawing. Daddy. Mama. Look what I made. It was a family portrait, 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a building. Above them, a son with an enormous smile. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Aria said, kneeling to hug her daughter. That's our Hope House, Mila explained seriously. Where you help people. Where we help people, Damian corrected gently. You help too. Every time you share your toys with the kids in the childcare center, you're helping. Mila beamed, then ran off to add more drawings to her collection. Aria and Damian looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. This child almost didn't exist. Almost died on a concrete floor. Almost never knew warmth or safety or love. But she did exist. She lived. She thrived. And she'd never know the parking garage. Never know the cold. Never understand how close she came to not having this life. That was the gift they'd given her, ignorance of how bad it could be. Knowledge only of how good it was. Do you ever miss it? Damian asked suddenly. Miss what? The simplicity. Before the Time covers and the congressional testimonies and the nationwide expansion. When it was just us in apartment 4C, figuring out how to be a family. Aria considered the question carefully. No, she said finally. Because this is the dream I had in that parking garage. Not just surviving, thriving. Not just saving myself, saving others. I whispered I can't breathe, and thought it was an ending. But it was a beginning. She took his hand. Every family we house, every mother we help, every child who gets a chance, that's us paying forward what you gave us. That's us making sure fewer people have to whisper those words in the dark. And Damian. She squeezed his hand. I wouldn't trade that for all the simplicity in the world. He kissed her forehead. How did I get so lucky? You stopped in a parking garage when logic said to keep walking. Best decision I ever made. Second best, she corrected, smiling. The first best was asking me to marry you. Fair point. They stood together in their kitchen, listening to Mila sing in the next room, the morning sun streaming through windows, the smell of coffee and breakfast filling their home. 2 years ago, Aria had been dying. Today, she was living. Not just surviving, living. Fully. Completely. With purpose and love and a daughter who'd never know cold concrete or empty inhalers or the terror of invisibility. Outside, the world continued its complicated dance of joy and suffering, triumph and tragedy. But inside this house, 3 people who'd found each other in the darkest moment breathed easily. Together. Always together. And in parking garages across America, in doorways and cars and shelters, other voices whispered, "I can't breathe." But now, because of a movement born from one woman's survival, more people were stopping. More people were listening. More people were lifting the cloth and discovering that underneath. Hope. Always hope. Even in the darkest places. Especially in the darkest places. Because that's where miracles begin. With a whisper. A lifted cloth. And someone brave enough to stop. This story is dedicated to every mother who's ever protected her child against impossible odds. To every person who's whispered, "I can't breathe," and wondered if anyone heard. To everyone who stopped when they could have kept walking. You are seen. You matter. Your breath, your life, has value. Hold on. Help is coming. An absolute, bone-deep terror that he was already too late. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Damian held them tighter and whispered into the cold. No one was supposed to be here tonight, especially not a child. But you are. And everything, is about to change. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.